All right, we'd like to welcome. I know the only night I needed a gavel and it's not here. No, that's fine. Welcome everybody. I'm excited that there's so much energy in the room. This is terrific. All right, I would like to welcome you to the Ojai Unified School District Board meeting. If you could stand with me and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have the approval of the agenda is the first item. I don't believe there are any emergency modifications.
There is none.
So if we could have...
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And approval of the minutes. Are there any comments to the minutes from our last regular meeting? We've had a number of irregular meetings. One could argue all of our meetings are irregular. But,
Move approval of the minutes.
I'll second all three. All three minutes?
Yeah.
All 3 minutes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Now to one of the highlights of our night, the student representative report. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you. So I'll start off with Nordoff. Our graphic arts classes have received a 3D printer. Staff are currently being trained on how it can be used. And I've heard some of my peers talking about it. They're really excited to be working with it.
Wow.
Girls volleyball had a great CIF run. There was an excellent turnout of student support at the final home playoff game. Winter sports are now beginning.
Were you involved in the volleyball team?
Yes. And leadership is currently running the annual canned food drive to benefit the community assistance program. And we are preparing to end our semester the week before winter break for the first time in order to give students and teachers a real break. And then for Matilaha news, Matilaha's leadership class attended a leadership conference on Tuesday, November 3rd at the fairgrounds. The Aloha Dance happened on Friday, November 6th. The leadership class has started the Matilaha Times newspaper. The first edition went out last week and it was a hit. They are planning to print an edition twice a month.
We'll get that way.
For Miramonte news, conferences are currently underway. Miramonte is happy to announce that by January 1st, every 3rd through 6th grader will have access to a Chromebook. 4th through 6th graders will be participating in a craft fair coming soon. Chaparral news, the Chaparral horticulture? Is that it?
Horticulture.
Okay. And graphic design students will be having a small holiday opening house in the Chaparral Auditorium Friday, December 11th from 4 to 7 p.m. They will be selling items that they have made in class. This is to raise funds to cover the cost of consumables for next year. The horticulture students will have succulent arrangements in planters that they have made, plants that they have grown, and possible vegetables from their hydroponic garden. The graphic design students will have t-shirts, mugs, etc. with designs that they have created. And then Topa Topa news. 5th graders recently participated in the state floats parade at Topa Topa. Students shared new and unique ways of representing their state. Topa Topa also recently had a hydration station installed on campus. PTA raised the funds to make it happen. Miners Oaks news. Parent conferences started this week at Miners Oaks Elementary. Students are participating in a Seas Candy fundraiser in order to raise money for the school. San Antonio, the book fair is currently underway. The fall festival will take place on Friday, November 20th from 7 to 10:30 p.m.
Terrific. Well, thank you.
That's a lot of news.
There is a lot of news.
Just wait till December, right?
Right. Congratulations on the volleyball.
Are you in the student government? What is your...
I'm in leadership and then I'm taking government.
Any comments, questions? Great. Well, we really appreciate your report. Thanks for being here. And as always, with our student representatives, you're invited to stay, but you're welcome to leave if you want. We're not allowed to leave.
No, there's homework.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But you can. Thank you.
Finals coming up, yeah.
All right, and we have one person has signed up for public comment. We're really happy to welcome Angie Janasi.
your new hairdo.
I don't like the podium.
You can stand wherever you
Well,
want.
I'll stand back. It just
Okay.
makes it all so official. So I'm trying to come up and speak to you every meeting. And I hadn't really prepared anything. But I know the thing that I have been talking with Cheryl over and over and over again, and I spoke to John about it when he was the principal. I speak to my husband about it all the time. And that is that I want our district to be proactive. And I often feel like we are reactive to what's happening in education or what comes down the pike for us or what happens financially. And I was thinking today how we have this golden opportunity. We have an incredible board. We're all really happy with you guys. We love you. We're really happy, at least personally I am, with our superintendent and our assistant superintendent. I think we have a great group of principals, and I know we have a great group of teachers. And I feel like this is this golden time for us to really look at what do we want to do with our district, how do we want to go forward with it, and work together to not be reactive to a recession or TK coming down the pike, oh no, what are we going to do, or whatever it is. But to think about what do we want to do and what is our policy, what is our vision, and kind of get together and make that happen. And I would like to be the OFT president who says, let's do this. Let's take this great group of people in our district and have a vision for our district. I've been here for 22 years. I was counting today. And I've never felt that way. When I got hired at Ojai Unified, I thought, wow, it's got to be a great district because we've got all these creative people. We've got so many things going on. I only hear good things about it. And then I kind of felt like it was just the status quo when I got here. And that's not how I function. I like to push ahead. I like to be a trailblazer. And now's my opportunity to put that out and say, let's do it. Let's be forward thinking, and let's all work together. OFT, the board, our administration, classified. We have a great thing going. So that's all.
Thank you very much. We don't necessarily comment too much about comments, but I think on our next month's agenda, we'll have something about forming a committee for goals and visions. So that sounded like volunteer.
Oh, another committee for Mrs. Mosey. One more, no way. Actually, I would.
We don't need a whole life. Forget it. Why are you always uncomfortable? Kids are grown.
Can we have a committee meeting as long as we can go for a walk and do a committee meeting? I mean, that is the new meeting, right?
We haven't formed it yet, but
I like that idea.
it sounds like there's interest.
So I mean, what you said is completely consistent with the expectation of what will happen.
I'm so glad. Really, I just think we have this amazing opportunity. We have so many great people, and if we don't seize it, then it's just, people will retire, people will go away, people, and then it's just the same. And why do that? Why not all of us leave this legacy of something awesome?
Great.
I might just add to that. I know this is not the podium, but aside from issues of money, we are surrounded by resources that are remarkable and are underutilized. I've been here ever since I've been here, which has been a long time. And I've always felt that amazing resources that's in this community, within this natural region, are underutilized for education and for many other businesses.
Well, thank you. I wish you had waited till later on in the agenda because we do have something on that too. But that was such a great introduction, I want to jump right ahead, but I'll restrain
I'll be awake
myself.
when it comes around.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I'll just point. All right.
It's really warm in here.
But I absolutely agree with that.
Oh, I had turned it on, it was like a heat on.
And it was very chilly, perfect.
Okay,
We'll do that numerous times. On, off, door open, not open. Our biggest challenge in the district, speaking of challenges, it's like getting the temperature in the room. A little bit, Josh, yeah. Josh, thank you. Yeah.
We need Balfour Beatty here at every meeting.
Or Josh.
No, Josh, you're great. You're actually the one who knows how to do it. I was kidding. All right, so moving on to item number 6, special presentations. Hank, do you want to introduce our...
Very briefly, before I introduce 6.1 or 6.2, or a little bit later on, Andy's presentation is 7.4.1, even the board policies, which are a little different. For the first three, as I shared with the board in some notes earlier today, I think, actually picking up on Angie's theme a little bit, I think we're at a point tonight and with some of these issues relative to this board in particular, I've watched them operate now for the better part of a year, where I think we can achieve most in this room by truncating administrative presentations and elongating conversations between and among board members, between and among board members and the presenters. It's just I've seen a sense of real collaboration, trying to get at not necessarily the truth about things, but just learning together. And so as I've met with the various presenters over the last couple of days, that was sort of the theme that I was sharing. So we're still going to do all of our hard work before the report gets to the board. That's not going to change. I expect it to be done professionally, and it always is. But we're going to cut down a little bit on how much we need to say about what the board has already received and what will be presented on in PowerPoints and or other kind of either hard copy or not hard copy information. When I say that, as Kevin would say, for all the people out there who are watching, if anybody would like a copy of anything, they're obviously not here tonight, don't hesitate to call Kathy Smith in my office and we'll get you whatever you wish. So the material, just so you all know, in 6.1, the board has received the PowerPoint slides in addition to the general commentary that Marilyn and Dawn and Teresa will be presenting. Similarly in 6.2, some good background information from Josh. He has some other thoughts he wants to share with you about a very, we think, important issue upcoming in 2 to 4 months or so. That is El Nino. And then Andy has done some outstanding work as a follow-up to the really unfortunate issue that unfolded this summer in terms of the theft in our business office, from our business office. So that having been said, just one more thought about the administrative presentation tonight. If you go back through our recent years, I'll just speak since 2009, October 2009, and as far as I can tell, many Octobers before that, that was the date, so a month before tonight, that was the date when the full compendium of test score data were presented. So if not K through 12, 1 through 12, or 1 through 11, or whatever the group was of grades, and many, many, many slides, and so we cut back on the number of slides, but we still kept the concept of elementary, junior high, and high school in that October presentation. This year we're going to do it differently. Again, under the theory of let's learn together, because we're all learning together by a smarter balance, right? This is our first foray into looking at data coming out of a spring test experience. And we now have an opportunity to hear from our elementary leadership team. They're all here, which is great. They always come to support each other. So even though Catherine and Cheryl are not part of the presentation, they're here to support their 2 principal colleagues in Maryland. So tonight, we're just going to do the elementary piece. We'll get to the secondary piece or pieces in December and or January. And then the last part, which Marilyn will explain, where we're going to be changing the relationship between the test score data presentation and our single plans. Okay? And that, as usual, good ideas come from the elementary leadership team, is their idea in terms of how to make this learning experience even better, which will include, amazingly, people beyond the administration, as in teachers, okay, who will come and help us learn about what this whole smarter balance thing is like in mathematics and ELA. So Marilyn, you want to get us rolling, get us going?
Okay.
Okay.
And maybe this bank of lights can maybe be turned off so that the slides can show. Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think that's a little better too. The California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, CASP, that system has been a real, as CASP, we always have acronyms in California, well, we have them all over, but it really has, as Hank alluded to, has been a learning experience for teachers, for students, for parents, board members, and really all stakeholders, community members as well. In October, if you remember, Jackie and I gave a brief overview of CASP, which is the state's new academic checkup. That's what it is. It's kind of like going to the pediatrician for your well visit. The state's new academic checkup for students in grades 3 through 8 and grade 11. We know tests are a part of life, but they're also an important part of California's plan for high-quality teaching and learning. And really our goal is to help students graduate with those problem-solving, critical thinking skills, all those things they need to prepare for college and career readiness. This year, we replaced the former paper-based exams, and you know about that because Jackie and I talked about it. We replaced the paper and pencil with computer-based in both ELA and math, and the scores are really just a starting point. I want you to think of them as just a starting point. They're a baseline for progress that students will make over time. Now, most of our students will need to make significant progress. There's nothing wrong with that. And remember, tests are really just one way to gauge a student's progress. English language arts as a whole, just the whole English language arts, not broken out, has 4 achievement level descriptors. The top 2 are standard exceeded and standard met. So this chart is just a review of the comparisons that we showed you in October. But interestingly, you might notice in ELA, scores improved as students moved up through the grades. Whoops. In mathematics also has 4 achievement level descriptors. And again, it's a comparison of Ojai with Ventura County and the state. But on this chart, notice the scores went down as students moved up through the grades. Tonight, Dawn Damianos and Teresa Dutter will review the 3rd through 6th grade results in more detail for both ELA and math. ELA is broken down into 4 areas, which they call claims. Mathematics is broken down into 3 areas. You will be able to see a more detailed data when you receive, for board approval, those 5 SIPSs, Single Plan for Student Achievement. Over the course of 2 meetings, and again, as Hank talked about, in keeping with our theme of a learning experience, the K-6 team, which will include both teachers and principals, will highlight both curricular areas of math and ELA. I think, and the whole ELT thinks, it'll give you really more of an inside look at not only the teaching and learning, but really we want the board to be familiar with the curriculum and the instructional materials that go with that program. So during that presentation, we will also look at both formative and summative assessment. The CASP results give us all a key measure of how well students are doing, and they give teachers and schools information they need to improve instruction. Dawn
I'm over here.
Okay. Dawn will begin with ELA.
So the next 4 slides will show you the scores from the Smarter Balanced Assessment of our 3rd through 6th grade students in the area of English Language Arts. ELA is divided into 4 claims. The first claim is reading. The majority of our students scored in the at or near standard range. All grades are extremely close in the percentage scoring above standard. Keep in mind that our ELA material is not Common Core aligned, so teachers are supplementing with different materials. Our team has taken steps to move toward a new standards-based English Language Arts curriculum. We've already attended one adoption workshop. We will attend the adoption fair, and we're going to be assembling an ELA curriculum team to examine, pilot, and eventually adopt new ELA materials. The next claim in English Language Arts is writing. The 5th and 6th grade students have the highest percentage of students that scored above standard. Again, most students scored in the at or near standard range. And coming up in a few slides, we'll take a look at 2 writing samples. The next claim in English Language Arts is listening. When focusing on the above standard range, you may have noticed that 3rd grade students have the highest listening scores of all 4 grades. I'm sure the 3rd grade teachers are really happy about that. The last ELA claim is research inquiry. Once again, the majority of 3rd through 6th grade students scored in the at or near standard range. And of the students scoring in this range, the largest percentage of students are in the 6th grade. Now, after showing you all of this data, percentages and numbers on the performance of our students across the district in ELA, our elementary team wanted to bring the numbers to life. So the next slide is an actual student response. It is what a 3rd grade student wrote as a full right response on the 2014 Smarter Balanced field test. To refresh your memory, it was a sweet story about a horse and cats, and it was titled Avery. This is an example of writing that's a narrative, and the student used information related to the topic furry friends. This is considered above standard writing when it's measured for organization and purpose. You may notice spelling errors, however, that does not negatively impact the scoring. The organization of the narrative is fully sustained and the focus is clear and maintained throughout the piece. This sample also scored above standard because the opening effectively introduces the characters and the closure shows the culmination of the characters' work to save kittens. The next slide is an example of a 3rd grade student's full right response from the 2014 Smarter Balanced field test. Again, it's a narrative piece, and the student used information in the sources as inspiration to write the piece and to capture the essence of an experience as related to pilgrims. This sample scores below standard when analyzed for organization and purpose. Although the organization of the narrative is somewhat sustained, the setting is minimal and the characters were minimally developed. The opening and closing are weak and transition words are not used appropriately. These examples give you insight and understanding of 2 different levels of writing.
Can I ask a question? Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
Just because I won't remember to ask this probably. Is this, so some human being has to read all these and make these assessments? So, I mean, that's an amazing amount of work. Is there any sense of how that's done?
People are trained.
Right, they're trained.
And calibrated.
And remember when Jackie and I talked last month about why would we want a test that takes more time, is more expensive,
Right.
thus the more expensive. I mean, the state has to train readers, hire them, pay them, et cetera. So yes, but much better than the
Fill in the
fill in the
bubble.
bubble.
Yeah, because I mean, when you made the point of transition words used inappropriately, wow, that requires some sophistication to.
It does.
To see that that's not happening, and I love the spelling of the word curious, by the way.
I know.
I thought the spelling was very creative.
Inventive, yes.
It is.
Actually, I have a question as well, as long as, since Kevin interrupted you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
We're promoting it.
So I see that they had like material. What exactly are they doing? Are they digesting what was presented to them? Are they?
The material they're given isn't released to us, so we don't get to see those materials.
Okay.
So it is a little, you're wondering, what is it? It could have been an article about pilgrims. It could have been something like that. They read a couple pieces and then they have instructions to
Extract a
write.
story out of
But
that.
we aren't privileged to know what that is because it's not released information at this point.
Are these examples you've given us from our students in our school district?
Oh, no, we don't get to see what
So
our
we don't-
students wrote on the test.
So we just see the score, we don't get to see how
Correct.
everybody did it. Wow,
Correct.
that's hard to teach too, isn't it?
It is challenging. This was from the field test. So they, tested it and they released some of the material, and that's where I got these samples.
I think it still gives us a sense of what we need to teach. I think the prompt is so mysterious, though. It's like, why did they choose to write about that? What information were they given? But we still can see, transition stuff. There's still stuff that really stands out to us.
Something I would get concerned about a little bit is just, when I studied for the bar, there were, well, what you and I have, and Hank's got lawyers up, what's the word would be, Andy's a
In
lawyer.
public.
There are techniques you can use to get a better score. I remember, for example, if you had in law school, if you had a contracts question, in law school, your professor didn't want you to say it's a contracts question. That was boring.
Right.
What he wanted you to do is jump in, or she wanted you to do was jump in to the thing and get into the interesting stuff. So I could imagine some schools now teaching kids in a manner that's sort of designed to enhance their scores, but I'm not sure that would really be a great way to write. In other words, you make sure you use your transition words. Certain things you're going to get checked off on. You're going to get those marks on.
Sure.
I guess I just worry about gaming the system for reasons that aren't really related to education.
I think the writing that the test wants us to achieve is good writing. I don't think we write this way for the test and then this is really great writing over here. I think it runs pretty close. I mean, using transitional words, as you pointed out, is really sophisticated, and we want our kids doing that. It gets them maybe extra points on the test as well, but I think it's teaching good skills.
Your concern is interesting, though, because I think that's what Texas was known for CST, is teaching to the test. And ultimately, their students did not fare as well in terms of overall education. So I think with Common Core and what we're seeing here, this is a huge step forward in how the kids are being assessed for real good education.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a step forward.
And then we feel writing's so important, and it spills into other areas as well, as you'll see in the math in a bit. So we've already had a training with Judy Bowers, and we had that in October. Judy Bauer. We had that training in October, and we have another one scheduled for January, and it's focused writing, and it's based on Common Core standards, so.
Dawn, and I
We're
was
working on
actually, I peeked my head in for a little
Oh,
bit
good.
on that, and one of the amazing things, and I think I can see already, is one of the things she was talking about was writing together. I mean, it's like asking kids, give me an idea, let's put it on the board. And I think the teachers were kind of excited because writing always was like, well, you gotta have a half hour so they can get their pencil, they can get down. And instead it was more, how do you come up with a thought? How do you follow? How do you transition? And they're all doing it together. And I think, it'd be very interesting to see within a year or two how that changes their ability to sit down and be excited about it versus, oh my God, I have to write.
It's the collaboration that keeps coming through in math and English. It's the collaboration that Common Core is really promoting, and it's one of the key pieces of it. Everybody's learning from each other.
We satisfied with it, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, Teresa's gonna now talk about math, and you're gonna see, as I said again, how writing ties a little into math as well.
So the next several slides show the scores from the Smarter Balance assessments of our 3rd through 6th grade students in math. Mathematics is divided into 3 claims. The first claim is concepts and procedures, and it's the area in which our students struggle the most. In grades 4 through 6, the number of students scoring below standard is nearly 50%. Interestingly, these scores are consistent with Matilaha, Nordhoff, as well as the rest of the county. In a recent leadership meeting, we agree that this is likely a reflection of the difficulty in applying the concepts and procedures as compared to just finding the correct answer to a mathematical problem. Students are now required to write out their math answers. They must justify their reasoning in writing, which is a huge change. As Dawn mentioned, we've provided professional development in writing because it's such a critical part of a student's success. In the second claim, problem solving, modeling, and data analysis, we can see that our students perform better than in the previous claim of concepts and procedures, with 65% of our 3rd graders and 65% of our 6th graders scoring at, near, or above standard. With the change in strategies, as we become more adept in implementing Common Core standards, and the continued expansion, or explosion really, of technology use within the learning environment, this area of math has been especially interesting to observe in and out of the classroom. The third claim, communicating, reasoning, demonstrating ability to support mathematical conclusions, is the area in which our students were most successful. 75% of our 3rd graders and 69% of our 6th graders scored at, near, or above standard. And this is the area in math that requires more writing than in the past, which can be pretty challenging even for some of our math brains.
Briefly, I'm sorry,
Sure.
a couple more. Do we know how we, on the one that we did the best, the last claim, how did we do relative to the county?
Oh, I don't have that slide. I think Marilyn might have
I don't
that.
have the claims broken down by county.
I don't,
But I can get-
Kevin, I think the range, the range between OUSD and the county and the state in each of the 3 math areas and each of the 4 English areas, the ranges were very small in terms of difference. That's why the means are about the same. The ranges among the 7 areas was really pretty small.
So in other words, an area that was easier for us typically was easier for the county and typically easier for the state.
Tended to be.
Yeah, we're pretty similar to that. So the next slide is a general 2-point rubric for math. And it's applied in the problems that we're going to take a look at right now. The stronger integration of writing within math and our Common Core standards can be seen in the math problems shown here. This is an example of a grade 4 mathematics short text response from the 2014 Smarter Balance field test. So the problem says, Liam is making a lemonade. He needs 16 ounces of lemon juice. He has 10 lemons. Each lemon makes about 1.5 ounces of lemon juice. Will he have enough lemon juice? Explain how you know. The answer given, as shown in the next slide, he will not have enough for his lemonade. This slide shows an example of a 0 score. Although the student correctly identifies that Liam will not have enough lemons for the lemonade, there's no attempt to justify the decision mathematically. The student only presents an answer to satisfy the prompt of yes or no. This simplified response was the type required in previous standardized tests. So it's another example of the difference in Common Core. The next slide shows the response of another student to the same problem. The answer, I know that Liam will not have enough lemon juice. I know this because 1 1/2 times 10 equals 15 ounces. Liam needed 16 ounces. He will not have enough lemon juice. Here we have the same problem, however the score here is a 2. The student correctly finds that Liam does not have 16 ounces of lemon juice with the given 10 lemons. The student shows that given 1 1/2 ounces of lemon juice per lemon, 10 lemons yield 15 ounces of juice, and uses this to conclude that Liam does not have enough. This student has demonstrated full and complete understanding of the task and receives full credit.
So Teresa, one of the things, and one reason why the 0 points might have been given in this new rubric is it could have been a complete guess.
Right.
Right, that's all he had to do is just write down that he didn't have enough lemon juice, right?
True.
Okay, so
And
it's
guessing-
not that the writing, it's not that the difference between the two mathematically is any different or very different, but the first one could have been a guess.
Do you know what the score would have been if he said, I know this because 1.5 times equals 18?
Oh, with the wrong answer?
Right.
It would probably have,
I can tell you that when we were at the county and we were doing our training on how they score these, that was one of the things they look for. If a child gets a wrong answer with the first part of the question, but continues to figure the problem out using that wrong answer, the wrong addition, then they will still get a high score for that.
Okay.
Because that's just showing they made an error, but they still had the concept of how to figure out the problem. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've always felt it's better to be lucky than smart, but
how were your CST scores?
go ahead, Linda, sorry.
Do you think that, I mean, to me, when I look at those two answers, I see that the first child's answer as being an emotionally immature child versus a child who's much more mature emotionally. I just wonder, and that's not something that a child can control, you know, that.
True.
Yeah.
So I think that's also reflected in the scores that we saw before, where we haven't caught up with math, but within the writing, as the grades increased, the older grades did get higher scores,
They're
and
much
the
more
writing
emotionally
is a
mature.
big piece of that.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to do in these classrooms with teaching academics and helping those kids mature.
Let me ask you a question about the writing part, because when my kids were in school, they didn't learn to type until 4th grade.
Oh,
So-
we're typing a lot sooner than that now, yes.
I mean, in terms of, you know, real correct typing, and, because obviously that's a lot of typing to answer
It is.
one question for a
So typing
third
has
grader.
become
I
a
mean, no
much
matter.
bigger focus than it has ever been. So
That's a good thing, though, I think, in this day and age.
it's our reality.
So, when I read the question, I immediately went to 10 times 1.5 in my head, right? So, what would happen if they gave numbers and then said it won't fit?
Well, that is interesting. I'll defer to Catherine White.
No,
who's
they're going to
at
look for a
training.
narrative. They're going
They
to look
want
for the critical
words.
thinking
They don't want a formula.
and
Oh,
algorithm.
God. I'm glad they're doing
I think it'll still be better than what we had
They're
before,
not
where
going
it
to get
was
zero,
just
but yeah.
bubbling in an answer. So they'll probably receive more partial credit. But what they're looking for is the writing, the answer within a well-written statement. So that's really different.
Yeah.
That's really different. So as Marilyn mentioned at the beginning, these scores for the ELA and math claims are a starting point, a baseline for the progress that students will make over time.
I get, my other concern about this is it's really going to be devastating to kids who have certain skill sets. And favors kids who are good writers, but doesn't favor kids who have, strong math skills but aren't good writers.
I think we're definitely seeing kids who are struggling, who have been very good at math and very quick at math, are now very frustrated because they have to slow down and explain their thought and communicate and listen to others communicate different thoughts about how to strategically approach the problem, and it's causing some kids, I think, distress, definitely.
And some of those are our advanced math kids that are
Right.
having the hardest time with that.
But when you think about going out into the world, they don't, a lot of your conversations aren't, what's 15 times 1.5, right? It's like, how do I know what to do here?
Absolutely.
Oh, I need to multiply. So it's not necessarily knowing how to multiply, it's knowing when you need to multiply
That's
or
right.
what you need to do.
That's
However-
the point of Common Core, absolutely.
The question was 10 times 1.5. I'm sorry, Jane.
No wonder I got it.
Just take that to another level, though. So you have a group of students, you were positing there are a group of students who have two different skill sets, right? They might have mathematical, scientific skill sets or whatever, and then you might have others who are more facile with words, et cetera, okay? What about the students who might have pretty strong mathematical skill sets, but don't have strong English language skills, right? So now we're seeing this great diversion across the county, across the state, in our own situation, where that, talk about frustrating, that's super frustrating, right? At least the other group, right, has good English skills, may not be so strong in math, but they're not dealing with a language deficit. And that's something I think.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a very small English learner population, less than 15%, so small compared to the rest of the county. But though we're really targeting those students, knowing the Common Core and knowing, some of them are good critical thinkers, good problem solvers, but might not be able to express like the lemonade problem. So we're really targeting things like academic language and content literacy. So if in their English language development class, they're learning about the water table in the regular class, but in their ELD class, maybe they're learning the vocabulary about the water table and those kinds of things. So that when they do go back in the inclusion model in the regular classroom, they have some of that academic language. That's critical for those students to have success.
And I want to get it right on what I'm complaining about.
I didn't know you were complaining.
Well, no, I mean, in terms of it being a problem for some groups of kids over others. It just makes me think that we've got to be super supportive of kids who are really strong at one thing, but they're not being, that's not helping them in the tests, and trying to find ways to help them and not let them get discouraged, because they might be brilliant. But if you're asking them the wrong question, then it's tough.
We had that same problem with the CST. There was so much reading that the kids had to do in math that, we knew the kids were better math students and the CST reflected their abilities. So,
Well,
so
thanks.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
I would say one last
Go
thing.
ahead, Teresa.
I'd say really that captures what we're trying to do, and that's to teach the whole child. And this is one measurement of their intelligence and their skill level ability. So the teacher is doubly responsible for being able to help the kids be successful on the test, as well as capture their strengths and weaknesses in the classroom. So.
There's a real element of, someone brought up Linda, you did, the maturity, real element of patience required. I mean, you talk about like a kid who just goes to that, goes, yeah, not enough lemon juice. Well, you have to write out that, for some people that would, and that was the point I was making about the bar exam. There is that element of it that, the real interesting thing is not the thing that you're being forced to regurgitate. It's, for some people it's probably easy enough just to do that math, but you got to write it out, show how many lemons there are, how many ounces are in each lemon. That feels, for some people, probably a little like it requires maturity and patience.
And the ability to sustain focus.
Yeah.
I think it's really good that we had the 1 year where we didn't get the scores back, because there were a lot of ahas in that, and oh my gosh, we really have to work on the kids, and exactly that. You can't just put an answer down, you have to write a full sentence, and yeah, it was good we had a year.
I have another question. I know you guys, you aren't quite
Not
finished,
quite,
but is the district still required to do supplemental education services? Is that
Title I, that's federal.
That's federal? We still have to do that, and are we guaranteed that they're following Common Core guidelines in their instruction?
That's a good question.
It's loaded, Linda.
I know,
I know you do. I know you don't like it.
It's a waste of money.
It's a waste
of taxpayer dollars.
I know your feeling about it, and I know most districts feel the same way that you do. Fortunately for us, most of our students who request Title I Supplemental Educational Services, SES, prefer to have 1, 2, 3 Success, which is operated through Ventura County Office of Education,
Okay,
and uses our own teachers.
Okay.
So it's a small, very small number, probably 10%. I'd say 10 go with another provider, 90 go with 1, 2, 3 Success. That's the only saving grace, so to speak. But whole different topic.
Yeah, okay.
But I think, like Teresa said, those results are one measure of students' academic performance, and they do provide a baseline. But like any measure of student performance, I think they should be viewed, like Teresa just said, or Dawn, no, Teresa, Dawn has a sore throat, had to be viewed as the whole child. We have to look at other information too. Classroom tests, homework, assignments, projects, all of those grades, all of those things that are kind of a composite of the whole child. The CASP, ELA, and the math tests really more broadly reflect California's state-adopted content standards than our old tests, certainly. And I think during this time of transition, I think we should note California does have a plan, and we now have rigorous standards. We have some accountability at the local level, thus the LCAP. We have funds that we can align them to need, whether the funds come from the state or the federal government. And of course, we now have more access to technology and a more robust professional development with both state and federal funds. So California does have a plan. Ojai also has a plan. The Smarter Balanced interim assessments, and those are part of the Smarter Balanced suite of things. Interim assessments allow teachers to check student progress throughout the year. How are they doing on this type of task? Giving them really actionable information and instructional modules in both ELA and math. In addition, they can inform instruction throughout the year and to make those students college and career ready.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you remember that came up at our
With
last?
the interim assessments,
Yeah.
correct.
So is there an opportunity then to, for example, in the English language, to send it off for the same grading, to get the same folks
Yes.
to review it?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
a really good question. The state, CDE, pays for the digital library and they pay for the interim assessments. What they don't do is the scoring, that writing.
The constructive response.
The constructive
and the
response, I was trying to think of the name.
performance task, right?
Yeah, the performance task and the constructive response. But you can send the rest of it out, thus the cost, the rest of it out to CDE and it will be scored. So we should be using them to really inform our instruction.
Can I
Then-
ask you about,
Go ahead.
talking about the digital library?
Yeah.
I was in on the 6th, 7th, 8th grade math thing, and there was something, but then we only have like 30 licenses, like for 30 students or something. Because the teachers there was something, the woman was trying to say, oh, well, you can go into this and then you can watch the student, but we've only have 30 licenses. Do you know?
No,
what that
I think
CMP
that might have been the math in service. The digital library is open to all teachers, unrestricted. I mean, we all have our password, but it's just a series of assessment, literacy, and instructional modules for teachers in both ELA and math. And then, in addition, the library has professional learning modules and instructional materials even that have been contributed by teachers. So there's no restrictions on digital library.
Okay, good.
And then our two math programs, Bridges, which is K to 5, and CMP3, which is 6 to 8, is really in its full year of implementation. So that's, part of our plan is looking at that, looking at the math progressions, how the math progressions fit in with the assessment. And then, as I said about the professional development, we have both state funds and federal funds that can really contribute to a very robust professional development. As Dawn mentioned, also we're beginning to look at ELA, because as you know, our ELA instructional materials are not Common Core aligned, they're 14 years old. 14 years old, and so teachers are having to supplement. So we have money available for professional learning. And, about the ELA, I'm sorry. We probably won't adopt till 2017-18, but we're beginning, as Dawn said, to assemble a committee. We've been to one toolkit training. We'll go to a publisher's fair where all the publishers have all the instructional materials out.
Marilyn, could you just briefly speak to how the ELA would be different in the Common Core context? Because I think for most people intuitively, math is the one where you apply Common Core to math and it's really a different animal. Whereas if you tell me Common Core in English, I'm thinking, well, the things you were telling me they're going to score, organization, transitional words, lots of detail.
Reading comprehension.
Yeah, that seems like what we would have always been teaching.
Right, but our current series doesn't emphasize writing. We have no real, what I would call, writing program of any substance in our current series. So we would hope to get something in writing.
Informational text.
And nonfiction, not a lot of nonfiction. And so a lot of Common Core is reading nonfiction and informational text.
Right, research, right?
I could add to that too. One of the biggest things in Common Core that it asks for, or we should be giving kids, text-dependent questions, which means what the question's asking really requires the kid to go back into the text and use the text to answer the question, and that's kind of missing in the curriculum right now. And then having the writing prompts also require that as well, because remember on the test, they have to read 2 or 3 sources, so different sources, different articles or different things, and then pull from all 3 to write their response. So a lot of the ways that the questions are set up right now in the curriculum we have don't really offer that kind of prompt for kids.
And they have to do that on the computer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and to be clear, obviously we're supplementing, my own personal experience. I was just helping my daughter in Mr. Hondo's class at TOPA, and he's clearly supplementing well because she was doing exactly, making reference to some material and pulling out, basically researching through and having to write an essay about the material. So, so just to be clear to those who might be watching, we are in fact doing it, but just not with a standard
Teachers
textbook.
are having to invent that, and pull that out,
OHI does have a plan, I think, to help our students progress towards that college and career readiness. And I think, to conclude, I think we're realistic about the challenges. There are challenges, but I think we also recognize the benefits of this new system, truly.
You have on there work with parents to help support their children. I'm especially concerned about math because that's where I'm hearing most of the frustration. What are we doing?
Well, it's real interesting. There are a lot of things online, and we can talk to the principals about specifics, but there are a lot of things online to help students or to help parents as they support their children. And I printed something today just that I found, and you could go to any grade, and it was called a parent roadmap. And this one was for ELA. But what was really great about it is you could see in reading, for example, this was for 4th grade. So you could see in reading what the expectation was in 3rd grade. So did my son do all this in 3rd? And then this is what the expectation is in 4th. And this is what grade 5 reading will be. So parents can kind of look at that and see what's expected, see what they needed to know in 3rd, what's expected for 4th, and then where they will be going. And this comes out of, it's called Great Schools, Supporting Your Child, and it has math and ELA. So those kinds of resources are readily available.
Are they available in Spanish also?
Pardon me?
Are they available in Spanish also?
Yes, they are.
That's excellent.
I just didn't print the Spanish.
Okay.
But yes, they are. I was really grateful that something that was pretty lengthy was available in both languages.
Actually, this brings up a very good point thing. And it kind of ties in with what Angie was saying, because I've been doing some reading. There are some school districts that are eliminating homework in the K through 5, except for reading. Read for half an hour with your parents. And then the math problems are solved during the day with the teacher who has the training and who can help, because it is totally different from the way we were raised, right? Or, of course, they're flipping the classroom, and the students all they're doing at home is watching a video. And then they go into the classroom to try to solve it while the teacher is there. Because those things, in a way, we had those in the past. You could get from your teacher, what is my child supposed to supposed to learn, expectations. But I think the struggle in math is, we don't know as a parent what they're asking and how to get the child to that point. And we can't really look at the book and say, okay, here's a sample and and going online, I mean, Javier has done wonderful work on parent support and places to go and links online, but I don't know how many people have the time to do that.
Well, you can also, you can find a lot of things online about how to do math. But I don't know, I mean, maybe you can, and maybe this should be part of the single plan conversation, but I don't know that there's anywhere to go online to teach you how to do math like the textbook that the kid has wants you to do it, which is completely different. I mean, even in the 1970s, the new math, it was the same sort of thing. It doesn't matter what answer you get as long as you show your steps and you do, but at least parents could figure out how to show the steps. And now I think a lot of them, they look at the textbook and just don't have a clue how to help their kids.
Now,
So,
there's a component with the Bridges program called Home Connection that does, I think, is pretty parent-friendly.
okay, great.
And like you said, we do have the videos, but you're right, Jane, it's very challenging for parents right now to support some of that math. Yeah.
There are websites, though, that I know people have typed in Common Core math, you type in the grade, you type in the standard, and then they actually show you what they're expecting. And I know that because I have a cousin who teaches math, and she was saying, I don't even know what they want me to do, but I went to this website and it showed me what to do, and she had told me that. So I was, and of course I can't remember what it is right now, but
How many of our parents have that
capability
of going online?
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, at least it's something, but yeah.
YouTube anything anymore.
And I
Well,
think,
yeah.
Jane, in answer to your question about homework, I don't know when the article, I don't know if it was in the Times or what, about homework. So we've been having these philosophical discussions among our ELT. And it's pretty interesting. We've had a lot of talk about it, and that maybe it should be just reading or home studies, as Cheryl called it, instead
Study
of
work,
homework.
not homework.
Study work, which might just be 30 minutes of reading or 60 minutes of reading, and maybe studying for your science test or something. But not this stuff that, like you, to which you referred, Thane, these problems that parents really don't know how to help. And I know as a grandparent, I get called, Grandma, can you look at this? They take a picture. Can you help me?
Well, the other thing too, if the parents can't do it, then the kids are like, well, how come I have to do it since you don't know how? You're the adult,
Yes.
you know, so it's almost an easy out.
We as parents know
Yeah.
that dialogue.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I just want to say, it certainly occurs to me that maybe we may be in a somewhat rarefied group with respect to our access or use of the internet. I mean, it's a good point for us always to be thinking about it. It's shocking to me I keep on bringing my AYSO experience up tonight. You guys weren't burdened by it yet, but I'm going to do it now. But it's amazing. I mean, I have parents, regular folks that are out in the world, and every week they say, when's our game? I'm like, go to the website.
I emailed you.
But they don't. You know, it's shocking how little people use the internet even now.
Well, maybe we should go to the city council and ask for free Wi-Fi throughout the city. There are some cities that are doing it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know what the reason people don't use it as much as I would think is, but if access to the Wi-Fi is the reason, then that would be good.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so
I
much.
really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to get a better understanding of what's going on.
Our students are really lucky.
Well,
They're really, really lucky to have you guys.
it's
Good team throughout the district.
yeah, it's in our zeal to make it a learning experience.
So, before you pack up,
Yes.
I saw you packing up. I taught a lot of years, I can tell when people are packing up. When you teach high school, juniors and seniors, and the clock is about a minute away, and you hear the ruffling, okay, but I am going to excuse you very much like Thane excused Lindsay, but the metaphor goes this way. So you remember I introduced agenda items 6.1, 6.2, and 7.4.1, sort of outlining for you that what you just did, 40 minutes to 45 minutes in these last period of time, is, I think it's a great metaphor for a couple things. Number one, what you did was very Common Core-ish. Okay, think of them as the teacher. So there were 5 teachers and 5 students. That's a pretty good ratio, right? Yeah. I wish we could do that all the time. But what happened was, appropriately, each of you didn't wait for the teacher to say the next thing. You asked a question when it was on your mind. They were so well prepared that they were going to get to what they were going to get to anyway, which is what good teachers do, right? So it's up to the teacher to get to the end of the lesson, in quotes, but how you get there depends a whole lot on the class, right? Sometimes you talk, back to the 15-minute class, you only have like 22 minutes of things to say, and nobody's saying anything. So now you got, it's like like waiting for the commercial on TV. You got to straighten out. This was exactly the opposite, right? So what you saw here was a great metaphor for Common Core instruction. Number one, with the teacher still prepared. It's not just winging it, right? You have to be prepared. You have to have materials. You have to know what you're talking about. The next thing I would say is that it shows you sort of this concept of using a board meeting for education, right? So it wasn't just what the participants did, but it's the overall concept of learning together on a subject that is not that simple, right? It was pretty complex, and each of the 5 of them had a contribution to make or more based on whatever conference that person might have attended or the particular focus that principal might have in his or her own, own studies. So I was trying to be generic, but it didn't work. Anyway, so that's sort of the way I think, I've always felt this, frankly, that's the best education, right? Just having an adult speak at people for a period of time and have those people, it doesn't matter who's in the room, they're going to say the same thing anyway, right? And not have any interaction, to me, that's never been a useful way of really learning. So I congratulate you on that. And thank you very much for setting a high bar, right, for the way we want to conduct not just the 3 agenda items tonight, but predominantly in the future. There will be times when we'll just present at you, okay? But I think this was a perfect first agenda item to not do that. So very well done, congratulations. And if you're really interested in seeing the next version of it, which is on El Nino, right, you can watch the videotape, right? You don't have to be here to hear it, because we're not going to ask your opinion about El Nino. But if you want to stay, you can. As Thane always says, if you want to stay, you can, but you don't have to.
But we have to.
Yeah, right, and you don't have any homework to do, I know, right? Anyway, so that was a sort of a reflective couple of minutes.
We could.
I don't think so. I think, no. A little bit early. Yeah. They're just leaving.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay, bye.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So that was a reflective couple of minutes on the first agenda item. Second one, this is something that I asked Thane and Mike, because they were the 2 members with whom I met, to get some time tonight on a subject that you can hardly turn around without reading about it. I wasn't here in 1997, so I wasn't here for the landslides and the closed roads, and you couldn't get out of Ojai to someplace else, almost 20 years ago. But certainly the news is equating predictions for sometime between January and March that might look a lot like almost 20 years ago. City councils talked about it, counties talked about it, and Josh, Kenny Brown, who's our point person, obviously, is Director of Maintenance Operations, Transportation, as you can tell from the materials and other experiences he'll talk about, is exceptionally well-trained and well-versed, well-educated in sort of all things dramatic when it comes to rain and other kinds of natural disasters. He's been around the block throughout the state and in Oregon also, so Oregon and California and a lot of these endeavors. So what's on the agenda then, material-wise, back to what I said before, is an outline, which we're not going to cover in detail, an outline that you put together just to give you a sense of if nothing else, just the titles of things that need to be considered, right? And there's a sub-story under each one. Then there's a one-page text, very well done, on the work that he's done to learn about El Nino predictably. But then what I really asked Josh to do in a meeting among Josh and Andy and me was to talk about the broader issue of how you go about preparing for a potential, I won't call it disaster, that's overstating it, but a big problem, right? And particularly in our geography, where, I thought this was probably true, but Josh confirmed it, that given our particular geography, compared with the rest of the county, whatever might happen in Ventura County, predictably will be of a greater nature here than the norm. Well, I don't want to overstate it, right? But on a scale of 1 to 10, right, if 5 is the average in the county, we might be in that 8-9 category because of where we live, right? And the challenges that we have here. So that's that's my introduction to all of your excellent work. And so just sort of keep it as, big picture. We don't have to worry about all which gutters are going to get cleaned out. Yeah. I know you're going to do that, but let's talk about what the challenges are. Chuck's here to help. He's been really involved, cutting down branches and all that stuff. So, and these guys have done a great job in the last number of weeks, with hopefully more weeks to come before we have to deal with it.
That's what we're hoping. Definitely.
Yeah, that was why I decided not to put it. That's why I decided not to put it on the December agenda. Right?
Oh no, it's great to have you here, and I'm thrilled about this because when I drive down, to Ventura, there are the roadside signs that say prepare.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
And then it says text whatever number to whatever, and I'm thinking, am I supposed to text in the car? Am I not supposed to text? What am I supposed to do? So here you are.
You can hardly miss that sign, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so go ahead.
I think that sign is a great example and maybe a good starting point because it's trying to indicate to us to be as well prepared as we possibly can. And you may have noticed on that sign also the recommendation to sign up for VC alerts, which you also see in the literature here tonight. But the VC alerts is just one component of trying to be as well informed as we possibly can. I think I've said this to Hank before. I think that's one of the things we do best is try to educate and get people as best prepared as they possibly can. So talk about strategies overall. If you do get isolated here in the Ojai Valley due to a mudslide or road closures, what are you going to do then? Have those conversations in advance with your family, with your friends, your neighbors that might be taking care of your pets for maybe a day or two. If you can't get home to take care of the kids, are they going to go to grandma's house, that kind of thing. So make sure that you're having those conversations as far in advance as possible. But on that same level, that's what we're doing really with maintenance, operations, and transportation and the various areas that I oversee. We're trying to do that multi-pronged approach where we go out and look at those areas that historically we know have been problematic for us throughout the district and try to actually get to solving those and as far in advance as we possibly can, not knowing everything that's going to possibly face us in the end or that we're going to be faced with in the end, but actually go out and try to be a little bit more proactive instead of reactive.
Hey Josh, I got the first question.
Earlier.
Are any of our schools in the flood, that Ventura has redone its flood map?
Mm-hmm.
Are any of the schools in the flood zones?
If you look at the FEMA map, it shows a majority of the city of Ojai in the flood region. And the one school in particular that's of concern is going to be San Antonio, here in the valley in particular. Right. And for the most part, the flood zone kind of parallels the creeks and the canals. So Ojai Avenue, even of itself, is somewhat of a low point, especially as you saw, how it flooded when the theater water main broke and water kind of traps to that one region here downtown. But that's the normal tendency. A lot of our roads, unfortunately, do run parallel to canals, barrancas, waterways, streams that have been dry for quite some time, have accumulated quite a bit of debris. I know county, city, the local agencies are very involved right now in trying to go after those areas where they know that debris has accumulated, try to clean those out. so that we don't have as much of a flooding condition as we did, say, back in 1997. The one thing we are anticipating is a possible amount of 6 inches or more rain than what we saw back in 1997. So 97 was somewhere around more than 1997.
How much was there then?
It was around 36 inches was the amount back then. So we're expecting somewhere around 42 inches of rain for our Ventura County region. So it's rather significant. So they're wanting us to pay as close attention to getting prepared, making those provisions, doing what you can in advance. Although we do hope that it doesn't end up being as strong of a El Nino as we're anticipating. That would be great. I'd still like to have a little bit of rain. I just don't want it all at the same time. Part of the reason the El Nino effect is so damaging in the end with floods and whatnot is that these storm systems come rapidly in close succession, and they don't give you enough time in between those weather patterns where you get the runoff to actually go out to sea eventually. And being here in the valley in a rain shed zone, we're going to have to be dealing with those countermeasures sometimes even hours after the rain has passed by us. And we have to have that level of awareness because the streams, the canals will continue to rise even after the rain has stopped here in the valley like that. So something that we have to be definitely aware of and make preparations for. But as far as the various departments, we have been doing quite a bit, as Hank mentioned earlier, tree trimming, those sorts of things. Even in the last couple of days with the severe wind that we've had tree branches fall down on playgrounds, on roads, on walkways. So we're trying to go after those types of items that we know we can get to now before the larger storms hit. We're also trying to look at those basic storm drains on our sites and make sure we stage countermeasures like sandbags and wattle straw bales. So we have those things that are close at hand when we need to use them at the school sites and instead of having to maybe run all the way back to district office to get some sandbags to protect an area.
Do we have sufficient personnel if, we're in the midst of a really hardcore storm and you've got hay bales and whatever stuff staged at each of the schools? Do we have enough people to disperse them throughout their whole district to be able to work at the same time?
It depends on to what extent. I'd always want more people. I always think more hands would make it easier for us and we could react more quickly if we had more people. But we do have a certain number of people that do live here in the valley, close to district office, and the district office being more like a hub for us. This is where we come and pick up our trucks and equipment. Generators and pumps would all be staged here at the main district yard. So we do have, I only have 4 staff members, 2 groundsmen, 2 maintenance workers, and 3 of those individuals actually live here in Ojai. So they would be able to respond.
How about the custodians?
Yeah, I was going to ask, and can they, from a union perspective, can they do other work?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, the custodians would be involved. They wouldn't be probably as close to the early stages of the reaction and gathering the equipment, but they would be involved in the process later on.
Because each site has, like I know Kevin at Topa, for example, he's at Topa all the time, right? So you have people at each school.
And in general, we have a daytime custodian and an evening custodian. That's true. Yeah. So that there is an individual that's assigned to that particular site. They have the highest level of familiarity being there day after day. So yeah, we would definitely use them as a resource.
What about, evacuation centers like the gyms? Nordhoff primarily would be used as an evacuation center. What do we as a school district have to do in order to prepare the gyms? Do we, what are our responsibilities?
Yeah, we've already, this year we've already had site meetings with the Red Cross representatives so they can actually open up their containers, do an inspection, walk the site. The principal performed some of those walks. Dave Munson, I believe, for Nordhoff this year actually performed that walk himself. I was involved in it last year. I just didn't get the opportunity this year. But yeah, definitely looking at what we're doing specifically for those evacuation areas, because recognizing for Nordhoff in particular is the gymnasium area. We have had some issues with flooding and drain lines around the perimeter of that structure. So it's our effort to go after those first and foremost. Make sure those drain lines are clear, We did discover some blockage in a couple of them that have been giving us problems in the past. That we were
But even
familiar
if
with,
they're
so-
clear, sometimes the rain is coming faster than they can get through
Certainly,
those pipes.
and a good
so-
example of that, even with the recent wind and the colder weather, you see the leaves are starting to turn. Eventually, those leaves are going to fall to the ground. We just hope that they are able to fall, and we're able to collect them and manage them in an appropriate manner without the combination of excessive rain, because that's when it's going to be problematic for us. So certain things that we can't necessarily stop or prevent, we'll try to prepare for those as best we can, but what we'll do, we'll try to prepare like with wattles around some of the drain lines so that the leaves will go up to the wattle, a barrier, before it flows into the drain and becomes blocked or clogged.
As long as we're asking questions.
We are.
You are.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Please do.
I was just wondering, I see in your thing that there are plans to notify parents and whatever. I'm just wondering if phone service isn't available. Do we have just kind of a general statement that we can give to the community? If school is in session and there's a huge event, should you go to the school? What should parents do?
I don't know if we've ever really done anything like that in the past, Hank. I think that's
one of the points of tonight.
Yeah.
As opposed to December.
Right.
I told Andy and Josh, there's no doubt that someone was going to ask a question for which we didn't have an answer.
Right.
That's
right.
one of them.
That's one of them,
Okay,
definitely.
because, and in fact, we've had many experiences just this year and other years where we lose power, right? And so we lose power. How are you supposed to communicate when you have neither telephones nor internet or anything else?
Yeah.
And the good news was it came back on. But, so we have to sort of think through that question on a broader scale.
Yeah.
What do we tell parents, what do we ask principals to tell parents, or what do I write a letter, or whatever the best communication network is, to say, if in your judgment, right, you can't communicate with us, this is what you do. That's a great question.
Yeah.
We don't have something like the VC alert for the Ojai district, right?
Well, we have the mechanism both through telephones and through emails to communicate, but sometimes those go out.
Right.
That's
So
right.
what do you do
Yeah,
when you have?
when that goes down too.
It feels like.
So, to clarify though, there's two distinct questions. One is if students are already on campus. The other is if at 3 in the morning, we know that we're losing or we've lost power, we're not anticipating it coming back up, we're closing campuses, and there is a very defined protocol for that.
Right.
There's multiple radio stations, KHEY and Spanish-speaking station that we report that information to, and so parents are encouraged to tune into those stations. The ABC affiliate of Santa Barbara also we report the information to, so it'll be posted on their television channel in the news in the morning. So there's a few.
But I think what he's saying is, is it generally, if there's no power, don't come to school? Because if you have power, you can't listen to the radio or watch TV,
All right. Yeah.
right, to find out.
You're
that
saying at the
schools are
houses as
closed.
well.
Yeah. It's gone. So that's why the question's so
You go
hard.
out and sit in your car, I guess.
So, we do have, right, and that, if you look at all of our district communications, right, every year you have all those things there. If, we almost had to do it one time, we haven't had it close since I've been here, which is a lot different than my former life. Snow, ice, but anyway, so I've sort of enjoyed
Can I
it.
say what we did in 97?
I don't know.
I mean, is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Before, if the kids were already there, or we went to school, we all showed up, and Carol was out in front going, "Go home." That's that, and we were like, "We get to go," and she's like, "Get out of here, go." And she just stood there, or we got out of the car and parked and said, "We'll stand out here with you," and direct parents home. And then we just made sure that kids didn't get out, and if they did, then there were a few of us who were there who kind of hung out in the classroom.
Yeah, you can do a plan A and a plan B.
Yeah, there was flooding.
For those who missed it on the radio because it wasn't.
Right.
But
because there were
hopefully we
a lot of
can
us who
set up a
missed it on the
system.
radio.
It's got to be a manual system. It can't be too fancy.
Yeah,
Or it's not going to work.
Granted, we do have some systems in place. I don't think we're going to necessarily rely on just one to make sure all the information is received by one venue, but that we're using multiples. And things that we've done in particular through the mod office, we're working with our IT director, David Rogers, right now for an increased strength on a handheld radio, a two-way radio, which would also give us some additional channels of communication and would also be able to transmit as far south as Ventura. So in the event that, say, we're experiencing some heavy storm activity, our maintenance guy that would be coming in first thing in the morning, he'll take that radio home with him. So he'll have a secondary form of communication. So even if cell phone communication or some of the other normal forms of communication that we rely on are not working, we'll have some secondaries. So we're working on that as well right now.
It seems to me that when, all hell's breaking loose, then all hell's going to be breaking loose. There's, rules aren't going to necessarily prevent people from being caught in some chaos. A rule that if, no matter how reassuring Thane Whipple tells me, don't come to school, your kids are fine. I might get on my skiff and go, but I am thinking, there are, one huge thing that we can do now is to get people's text, cell numbers. Because a lot of that information is outdated.
You're supposed to update it every year.
Well, you're supposed to, but I'm saying this is one of those maybe pulls rather than waiting for other people to come to us. That's probably something we should really be on to get. I know, for example, we haven't apparently done something in Nordoff because we still haven't gotten those texts, which I know they're sending out. With
They think they're sending.
Yeah, I think they are. It just means we haven't, somehow we're not, we thought we were, but we're not. But, it's just now while it's still dry, we should probably be really getting on those, because it seems to me text messages, while the internet's okay, and phone calls are great, text messages probably for most people would be the primary way that they would learn about things.
Yeah. And that is again, going back to the VC alerts. The VC alerts does give you some flexibility, and it's what it's offering. It will allow you to identify, say, your child's school, your work address, your babysitter's address, or even grandma's address, and put all those together. So you have these different flags that are going to occur at various parts of the city or throughout the county as a whole.
So what you're saying?
Ohio will be included.
What is that? Are you saying that individuals can sign up like that?
Yeah, individuals. It's a free service. It's actually offered by the county. It's called VC Alerts. I think I put the web page link in there, my summary sheet. It's right there at the bottom. You can go to the web page and sign up online. It only takes a couple of minutes. I did it myself. Did it for my wife and my kids, and rather quickly, easy to use, and I highly recommend it. Also,
I'm sorry. So are you saying that if we're signed up at VC Alert, we'll get the OHI messages through that as well?
Yeah, for things that are occurring in Ojai. Yeah. If you have road closures, flood conditions, power loss, those sorts of conditions that are occurring, that'll be flagged through VC Alert.
But those are county notices. So for instance, if there was something that you wanted to say specifically to our parents, would you be able to do that through VC Alerts? Or
no, we would want to use a different venue. We
do also report out to VC Alerts in emergency situations,
But our main communication right now is the Connect-Ed system.
Or email. Well, the Connect-Ed, as I said before, either voice messages or email.
And that goes back to those pre-programmed numbers like you were mentioning, Kevin, that make sure they're correct in the system so that the individual does receive the message instead of going to a dead number. But that way we can record a series of messages so that when the event comes, we don't really have to do much thought. We just hit a button and that message will go out to the list of distribution that we've indicated it to go to. Something that we have done differently this year with Andy's oversight is we've actually put together a computer-based tracking system for our routes now. So we are actually in the process of finishing off the student list inputs. So we have our normal riders on our bus routes, for the home-to-school routes in particular, that will have home address, contact telephone number, person to contact, and emergency.
And I think it would be a good plan too to think about what happens if a parent doesn't come to pick up their kids because they can't. And so what are we going to do? What should the parents do if they're a day late or several hours late because they're stuck somewhere?
Well, their parents are actually supposed to fill out and tell us, if I can't get there, my child may go with this person or must stay at the school site.
I remember
everybody near Topa is going to the Dingman's house.
Something I do recognize in the 2+ years that I've been with you guys is that the staff that I have is very well versed in their familiarity with this area. I have individuals that lived here, since the 60s or beyond. They've been through every major event that has occurred here in the Ojai Valley. So I'm relying heavily on the resources of my staff as well, Chuck included in that count, to point out to me some of the troubled areas, things that have been historically issues for us, and we're going after those first and foremost between now and the top of January.
How about in terms of equipment, do we have any generators?
We do.
And we have like
yeah, we have
smaller...
small portable generators.
Yeah.
We even have a generator that has the capability of running our wire feed welder in the event.
I can't think of, what's the name of the, those water pumps that you put them in?
They're like a trash pump or submersible
pumps.
sump.
Do we have like some
we
pumps?
We have some pumps.
Cool.
We have what would we call a trash heater model, which will actually take, sucking in an amount of debris, leaves, and wood chips, and smaller rocks, and would still pump in the event of an emergency. And we've done quite a bit of work, both on the Topa Topa playground, even here at the Place to Grow preschool. We've actually installed some sump and drain systems in those playgrounds just last year. And so we're ready, a little bit more prepared than we have been in times past.
And also in terms of letting parents know, like, let's say it's been raining for a couple days and there's a prediction, but not super heavily, but there's a prediction like 3 storms back to back that are moving in during the day. Will schools be closed then, because there's probably going to be massive flooding? And
that's going to be a call that goes beyond my desk.
It is, and it'd be nice if you have that kind of time. Think about it. Let's say you do. Sure, closing a school for a day is not a problem, right? You can always build it back in, not during vacations, but at the back end of the school year. And you just have to be intelligent and err on the side of safety. You can always close school for a day.
I think a key component for me in the decision-making process and the information I'm presenting to Andy and Hank is going to be my ability to route buses. If I know that it's unsafe as far as road conditions, and if I have water flow across a road, for example, restricting my capability to drive to San Antonio Elementary, that's a pretty clear indicator that we probably shouldn't be routing traffic to that school.
Well, right, it's good information, but again, we have a small ridership. I mean, it'll give us information about where the buses can't go, therefore you wouldn't want, your Chevrolet going there either, right? So, I'm pretty confident about that. And then just to get to what Thane was asking about, the golden rule, of course, is you never release a child anywhere until you know.
Until you know for sure.
So,
that there's
and you could follow the plan that Jane was talking about, or someone in whom you have great confidence shows up. I'm the neighbor, I've known you for 15 years, I'm positive Johnny can go with Jimmy, that's okay. But then you just stick around school until everybody's accounted for. My least favorite thing to do is to release kids in the middle of the day. And it has to be a very unusual set of circumstances. I would just rather keep them home, take the second guessing from the parents, who missed a day of work, and say, sorry, that was my call.
So, roofs.
Roofs,
What you've written isn't that you're going to do your best. Right?
Yeah.
So is there a chance that you're not going to be able to hit something that needs hitting?
Some of the bigger roof projects, like the Nordhoff High School gym roof, that's a more extensive project that we continue into next year, the entire roof structure.
You'll be able to do some patching.
Gymnasium roof there again at Lake of Matilla, but the patching, the site inspection, actually walking up on the roof and doing those patch and repairs, those will continue to occur. We're still moving forward with that process right now. Some of that is involving a little bit of Balfour Beatty as well for some of the larger projects, so that we can get through the winter season right now, and then when the weather cooperates, again, we can actually go into the construction process. What we're trying to do also is using a little bit more modern systems, modern technology as far as the roof repairs that we're looking at doing. Looking at using, say, a single ply membrane roof that can attach to an existing structure, attached to our racing metal roofs, for example, the Topa Topa. And I'm hoping to try to put one of those down in a matter of a couple of months. So hopefully I can make the deadline before the heavy rain starts for that particular area at Topa. I'd be happy
Just
with
as sort of a segue to one of those later agenda items we talked about. So Andy and Josh and I talked about where the chips will probably go first on major Measure J projects, and I concur with Josh's view that, among those main things we've talked about for a year plus now, the sewer issues, piping issues, electricity, and roofs may well be number one.
But you can't really start on anything.
Oh, we can't, no, it's not going to get
Things are
done.
closed
no.
out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be summer project, but, this happens to be a conversation about El Nino, but the roofs are in terrible condition.
Yeah, definitely consideration. We're looking at everything. Yeah.
Is there a possibility that we'll have all that stuff closed out in time to start doing some roof work?
Oh, you're talking about
Yeah.
the DSR things, yeah.
I think the larger projects, yeah, we've actually made a little bit of progress and maybe have closed 3 to 4 items in the last couple of months. Easy, low-fruit items that are on that DSA list. So we have made a little bit of progress on that. But Balfour Beatty will be taking more of a lead on that effort overall now. And most of the roof jobs that we're going to be doing, if we're not adding excessive weight or changing the engineering of those roofs, we can actually see them as a replacement project, which won't require the additional submission through DSA.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would be one of the exceptions of the small list of things that DSA will let you get by without doing a full submission on.
Any other questions?
See how much we learned without worrying about the online?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. No, this is fantastic.
That was helpful.
All right, Josh, thank you very much.
Thank you, that's my
Chuck,
I
thank
need
you.
somebody to read it
Yeah,
too.
exactly. Well, we weren't going to do that.
Josh, you had that one last note where it said rent tractor. Have you rented a tractor? Rent tractor?
Oh, tractor.
That's right.
Have you done it yet? Yeah? You have it out
I mean,
there?
as opposed to buying one.
We have. We've actually had
Ready to go.
multiple pieces of equipment outside.
Great.
That was a
And
plan.
there's still more work to do. Yeah.
Yeah, good to hear.
Can I make a comment too?
Yeah, sure.
Communication to me is a real big piece of this. I was in '94 when we had the Northridge earthquake. There was no power in the valley, some places up to 3 days. The fire department was released because their network, the tower in Ventura moved just a half an inch and microwave was out. So they protected the valley with their radios from truck to truck. So we've been to that extreme with no electricity. I come back to communication. My kids were all in school and young at that point, and the communication was pretty bad. And we are still a community, and that's what's going to hold this whole thing together. During '97, I was employed here, and it was extreme. At least a third of the people didn't live in the valley. Jim Berube and I were the employees that showed up here because the valley was closed up. So Jim grabbed a shovel like I did, and we got busy. But at that point, we were about 30% employees that were living down the hill. And I don't know what that current number is, but it will have an effect, as you asked the question. And we are preparing by strategically placing stuff. And whether it's a custodian or not, we've had a total flood, a whole wing. Every employee that could work was over there moving stuff. As Josh pointed out, the manpower is going to be important because we don't have enough people in the valley to make that happen. I've seen it firsthand, and that's why I'm trying to bite my lip. But the communication piece, texting is a great idea, but those of you that were here during the Medina incident, texting is actually a problem because that evacuated the high school over there with a text that wasn't checked. Okay, and so I give that as an example because the superintendent at the time allowed school to continue in '97 when the roads weren't safe. At 5:30 in the morning, I crossed Lions Creek, which is at the top of Denison Grade, and the bridge washed out behind me on the westbound lane. Summit School was underwater. We had parents on the road, and we were out as a staff to try and make that decision before the parents were getting their kids out. Again, supporting the communication piece. Well, the kids figured out how to get a hold of Kay Hay at the other stations, and they actually promoted more days off.
Yeah, that
Okay.
They called in. They called in.
Yes, they
Did they
did.
call? Yeah.
They had the codes. And
That happens
that's
around the
about-
nation. Yeah.
Okay, so I agree, the communication, seeing the extreme of where the fire department actually got out to maintain the stability of the community, because their radios were the only thing that worked, because the towers no longer, they were misaligned. And if you look at our district towers, that'll scare them. Give Dave all the money he needs to put those towers up, because they won't survive. Okay, so the communication piece, I agree, and Josh, as he said, with the proactive part, but having been through 3 events, weather, the Medina thing was not a weather event, but that was a horrible effect on our district, because the kids outsmarted us. That technology went around faster.
In that, I vaguely know what you're talking about. There was a concern about gangs or some issue at the high school,
Stabbing.
and parents rushed over and kids were leaving, but that didn't come from an official source, did it?
No.
It came from the text.
Right, but,
But that's the point.
That's the point,
It's
is
not
your
a
text,
foolproof
whether
way.
it's VC.
well, I'm suggesting, however, that the official text from the
Sure.
school district would be, authoritative, as opposed to, I agree that people can use text for stupid reasons.
But they
The
won't-
official
they won't have the
radio
same numbers.
station,
Yeah.
for the radio station say officially schools closed,
Yeah.
when it was indeed open, because the kids figured out that. So the communication piece is really my struggle point, because as parents, if our kids are separated from us, and we've already had the pre-communication, how that's gonna work. But I live in Live Oak Acres, so I may not be able to cross the Ventura River. And the San Antonio, that's such a calm little thing, it roars when it does, that end of town's closed. So if we get parents and kids separated, whether they're down the hill working or they're still here in the valley and they're separated, we still come back to the communication piece. And I experienced that here on this site when we had the gas leak on Montgomery and Aliso. In a matter of a half an hour, and Josh was new to us here, but he handled it very well. But we had a bunch of kindergarten kids out here with a teacher, and our evacuation was right where the gas leak was. So we had to regroup at the moment and bring it here, but it caused a lot of confusion with the parents. That's really the only event where I've actually seen an evacuation take place. But the communication, we had instant big pieces of cardboard trying to resolve, because parents were already upset, trying to get through all these roads that were blocked off, and their kids were right here in the auditorium, but they didn't know that. So the communication piece is what I wanted to reinforce on this, because we do have a great group of people who are working it, but I've seen it escalate very fast the wrong way.
Well, I think, the more I think about it, it seems like, one, have we considered as a district sending out some pre-El Nino?
Yes. That's one of the reasons
So,
we're doing this
great.
tonight, to be able to refer back
Right.
to November 17th and say, this is an agenda item in public, on video, and questions arose, and we just want you to know, here are some issues that we want to communicate with you about.
So a couple things that come to my mind is, one, I think it's obvious, but probably should be said, any parent who has a concern about the safety of the roads or...
Stay home.
Stay home, exactly. They are encouraged to stay home. Then the other idea is there any way that, this is the fiscal side of it, is there any way we can salvage some ADA by, for example, offering something, maybe some canned lessons or something that would be available online, or some other way that,
No, but the thing I'm absolutely least concerned about is ADA.
Yeah, well, I know, but...
Yeah, it's not, however many days...
If it's a lot of rain, we could be...
We could, and usually what happens, calmer, smarter heads prevail. I know this sounds like an oxymoron, in the state capitol. But anyhow, and then they just step back and say, wait a minute, this was an act of God. I won't go through all the litany, but there were winters in the Northeast where schools were closed for 20 days.
Yeah, sure.
20 days. You just couldn't get anywhere. It was Boston a year ago. It was, a week plus. So one would hope that the legislators and various people get together and say, listen, if you kept people home, congratulations. If you have a problem with your calendar, we'll give you a waiver. Safety is just so far paramount.
I agree.
But how you get to be safe is how well you communicate. Right? So I think some of your examples were excellent, and that's why, as I said, I want to do it tonight, recognizing we had a lot of good stuff happening, a lot of hard work, some T's crossed, I's dotted, but issues yet to be resolved.
I do have a question.
We got hit by northeast weather.
You wouldn't have a clue.
I might say also, Hank, sorry, just to interrupt real quick, is that we did, as of today, we started our site safety committee as well. So we actually have site representation now for the first time that I think that we can think of.
It's a good idea.
From every school site that will be attending meetings for us on a regular basis. And this is something where we can begin to increase our level of communication, get the information out, and then get the feedback from the school sites as well.
Mike?
Yeah, Chuck brought up a concern. You know, we were lucky last time that most of our folks were local when all of the access shut down, and we might not be so lucky this time. And that raises a question. You know, the city's talked to us a lot about cooperative kind of stuff. Have we had any conversation with the city in terms of if disaster
That actually was
strikes?
part of our meeting recently. The answer is a little but not enough. And remember, the city's 28% of the district. You know, so, you know, we've got, I mean, I was talking about 28%. 28% of the students live in the city limits. So that's part of the answer, right? Better than, it's easier to talk with them than the county. I mean, Steve Bennett's fabulous, but, you know, he can't mobilize the whole county for us. So yeah, and that's why I wanted you to get a sense of all the work that Josh has done to go participate in those conversations.
Yeah.
It's countywide, not city yet. Okay, so that's next on the agenda. I don't know. I don't know what their plan is. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to them.
No.
That's on me. My job will be to talk to Rob Clark to be sure we have the right conversation soon.
Yeah, because I would think, given that we're here and a lot of our schools are in the city, we should be integrated in terms, because we shouldn't be falling all over each other.
We should be, and we'll do our best. And they have some resources we don't have, we have some resources they don't have.
That's what I'm
I mean, we talk a lot about, you know, the sharing of information and resources in the broadest sense, but this is an instant case, right? It's an instant case where it would be ridiculous to not have it be maximized, right? So we will do that, and soon, very soon, but then well before winter break.
I got one other one. Just occurs to me, when you're out on your Measure J roadshow, one of the things you would talk about, I think, was a blowout of a plumbing at, was it San Antonio?
No, the one I was talking about was
Topa.
Right.
But, I mean, so let's imagine we've got a really significant rainstorm. Do we have people who will go to the schools in the middle of the night and inspect and make sure, you know, like in my house, when it's really going, I mean, I know I gotta set my alarm for like 2 a.m. and go out in my underwear and start making sure that stuff's not, you know, like those leaves that get clogged up and all of a sudden,
I'm not gonna picture that.
Well,
In your parka?
No, let me say, like, they're long underwear.
Thank you.
Katie wears this.
Yeah, right.
Kevin, we have.
They have feet as well. You guys should say, I'll wear them.
Jammies, you got jammies?
Yeah, we have had our staff go out and do that. Chuck's been involved in that, Craig's been involved in that. Even Don Downard, our mechanic, has been involved in that process.
In more than their underwear, though, right?
Yeah.
Chuck always wears his OUSD. Chuck always has his OUSD shirt.
But I mean, are there people assigned, you know, like,
And
are there going to be people assigned like to that?
Yeah, not necessarily 100% assigned, but more of a rotation. So we know the trouble spots to look after, and we would go to those trouble spots again. And something that I've done just in the last couple of weeks with Craig Robbins is we've actually gone out, we've taken some maps with us of the sites, and we've highlighted some key areas that we know are going to require some additional monitoring once the rains do start. Just things that we want to be aware of. Make sure that particular drain stays protected, because if that one goes, then we've got some other issues over here that we're not going to be able to catch up with. And there again, try to be that proactive approach to it and get the things staged at that location so we're ready to use them when the time actually comes.
Man, I'm going home and making my list of all the things in my yard.
Get those provisions right.
Well, no, I think this has been really productive, and it's generated some thought that we can follow up on, so that's terrific. Thanks for all your good work.
Yes, thank you.
And,
Thank you guys.
And hopefully the rain will just be steady throughout the year.
I may finish with one more thought.
Sure.
I mentioned to you about the trees, watering for lawns and trees. I just showed Josh a picture today because we recently had some rain and the mushrooms are coming up because they have dead stuff to eat on, and we've already had this discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw one today at one of our schools, and the tree will be coming down very soon. It looks like throw up at the bottom of the tree, and the location of this fungus is important. Because if we don't get any rain, we're still in trouble from all the trees being stressed, and you've already given me the okay to go after this, and so I am. But I showed Josh a tree today that had this fungus at the bottom because we just had the moisture and we got the heat, and the tree's dead. So that happens very fast, and so that's very much a concern, because as you mentioned roofs, right now I'm focusing on trees and roofs. Okay, whether it rains or not, we've got our hands full.
Sad to hear, but it's good that we've got the early warning signs. That's great. That's great. Thanks. Thanks for being on top of that.
Stage it.
All right. Item 7.1.1, variable term waiver for employment of education specialist.
Couldn't be more straightforward.
Right.
It is what it is.
Do we have any questions?
To approve the use of the variable term.
All in favor? Aye. Great, moving to 7.4.1, the Business Office Enhancements Report. And Andy, you've done a lot of work on this, and we appreciate it. Do you want to tell us about it?
Go for it.
Sure. So you've received now the memorandum that has my report. Just to give, again, that little background, I came in, actually, tomorrow will be 6 months since I started. End of June, we identified the theft that obviously we've been responding to since. I've met with each of the business office staff as well as each school site administrator, trying to identify ways in which we could enhance the business office operations. Laura and I actually went down to Fillmore, one of the next larger unified school districts in the county, to review their processes, see where we can steal some of their ideas. I personally job shadowed some of the staff to, again, watch each of those processes. So this product you have here is a summary of all of those discussions, all of that review, but it's also a living document that's going to continue to evolve, and there's certainly going to be ongoing dialogue that continues with the staff and how we can enhance the business office operations. One thing before we get into some of the detail here, which continue the theme of tonight, I'm not going to certainly read or go over each individual section. I'm happy to answer any questions on those areas, but I'll give a few of the high points. But I do think it's really important to emphasize that it's very clear from the first day I started here, and certainly during that really high stress period during the summer, that we have just an incredible staff in that office that has work ethic unmatched by any other I think I've seen in other business offices and other districts I've been a part of. Also tremendously loyal to us when it was not only high stress because of the attention that office was getting because of the choices of a single employee, but also just the increased stress of the workload, and all of our staff remained with us during that most crucial time during the summer and maintained a really positive attitude throughout that time of really wanting to do what was best for the district, despite the additional hours it required, the additional cross training, the everything else that it entailed. But I just want to make sure that we do thank Laura as well as her staff for that loyalty as well as that work ethic throughout this time. So
How big is how many people that we have in there?
we have a total of 5 staff on the fiscal and accounting side, and we also have an enrollment specialist. So a total of 6 people in the business office. We also have one...
What is an enrollment specialist?
Data, it's fine.
Primarily focuses on the school attendance accounting and making sure that we receive our funding based off of attendance. So he's
ADA.
Exactly. So he's the one that's helping track the enrollment throughout the year, looking at the ADA and helping us calculate that. Is the one that's putting together a lot of the reports that you receive on enrollment or ADA, and then also is the one most importantly reporting that to the state. Involved in the conversations with especially the higher the secondary schools on habitual absences, and being able to help proactively identify those and work with the school sites on trying to improve the attendance patterns of the students.
Handles all the inter-district enrollment requests, which are, well, eventually they get to him. But he's very involved with managing all of that, making sure the paperwork follows the kid.
Additionally, not part of the business office, but we do have an employee at Nordoff who's the ASB bookkeeper. And we'll just jump into some of the changes you'll see in the report, or we have made 3 changes to staffing based on the findings over the past few months. One was choosing to fill the accounting tech position at a higher classification at an accountant. We're very, very pleased with the individual serving in that role. Came to us from 12 years' experience at Oxnard Elementary. We also are increasing the hours of the bookkeeper at Nordoff to something that we'll see in the next month or two when the audit report is presented from NIGRO and NIGRO. It's something that we continually see is the cash handling around ASB accounts, and so we've really improved and enhanced that process at the high school as far as the cash receipting and making sure that we're maintaining proper accounting of the cash at the site. So we've increased the hours at the for the bookkeeper at Nordoff. We've changed the classification of that one position in the accounting office, and we've also moved some of the duties that the senior accounting assistants previously held over to my administrative assistant. She's going to be spending 2 hours a day in the business office. One, it's a real control enhancement. If you recall, one of the areas that we identified during the summer was that there was not sufficient reconciliation going on the back end of payments to the check register. She'll be responsible for that process. Having someone who did not create or approve the payments, having a third person in there beefs up the internal controls. It also helps alleviate some of the time that was spent by the accounting assistants not doing technical accounting, inputting and accounting work in the escape financial system, but rather something that more administrative task that could be completed by her. So those are the 3 staffing changes. We made some changes both to internal controls and then some that weren't necessarily related to internal controls, but were just some business operation enhancements that we saw based on dialogue with other districts. I'm going to go out of order of the internal controls because I know there's some real interest in one of the key oversight areas, which is the budget. And so we've made a number of changes, and more importantly, we're going to be ongoing. And really, I think the full transition is going to be seen at the adopted budget for 16-17, but some of those changes are occurring sooner. One thing is that we're going to be placing greater emphasis on school sites and department heads actually having greater ownership of their budget and involvement during the budget process. So that's going to be involving a much closer look by the site and department heads on those expenditures throughout the year. We're going to be providing them budget updates and expenditure updates on a monthly basis. They'll have a chance to review some of those things that were not identified back over the summertime. But more...
Could you just stop there? So,
sure.
It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the weaknesses that led to the theft was there's kind of a I'm not going to call it a slush fund, but for lack of a better word, kind of a generic area into which things could be billed where there wasn't a clear sense of like, hold on, we, like a family, if I had a budget, we've got a $200 a month that we spend for whatever, groceries, and whoa, there it says 400. What, something's gone wrong. Is that what you're talking about? Just having more control over budget items, so that the budgeted for an X amount, and you will see it if suddenly that budget's out of whack.
Absolutely.
That's what you're talking about.
So to clarify, the budgets that we present to the board at the adopted and the interim revisions are showing you a breakdown, typically by object code. There are a few other breakdowns, but in the accounting code system, there's actually about 25 unique digits that are assigned to each individual expenditure or revenue. So we're looking at a 4-digit combination. There are a number of other digits, and so the main, what we'll call your term of kind of a slush fund, or that big catch-all other fund, is that one that we all hate that's labeled by the state as that professional services, consulting services, the other operating services. That one, even though we only see it as one line that has jumped anywhere from $700,000 to $800,000 up to $1 million plus in a given year, is actually made up of potentially 50 to 100 unique code combinations that are assigned to individual sites, individual departments. So when we're looking at it in the business office or at my desk, specifically from a broader level, it is very hard to capture. Object code 5800 is what it is, increased by $10,000, or there was an expenditure that we weren't anticipating that was $10,000 higher. In $1 million budget, that might, in a number of lines, that might be harder to catch. If we are placing some of that emphasis on the individual sites and departments who may only have 2 of those lines that make up that unique object code, then they're able to, right, have a better chance of finding that. They're able to have a greater, opportunity to provide feedback, recommendation as to how they desire to use those resources, that funding. And so when they help us create their department budget, if Josh tells me there's a really important conference he wants to attend, it's part of El Nino preparation, he's going to be building that into his budget. Hank and I and Laura will be meeting with the department heads to review that budget. And then if at some point in the middle of the year he decides, I really don't need to go to that conference, I'd rather go to X or I'd rather purchase Y, then that's going to require a budget transfer. It's going to be a whole process that will actually allow us to, again, keep track of if there's something that wasn't initially planned, then that's actually account for that, and that's a change from what was planned to what was actually purchased or what was incurred.
Just one addendum though, so I was actually thinking you might go in a little different direction. That, for sure, the disaggregation, decentralization, getting more people responsible for their own areas. But on page 2 of your report, when you're talking about a huge change in the last sentence of the second finding on page 2, the department has set a goal to reduce the value of payments processed through direct pay.
Correct.
Right? Direct pay by 90% compared to the prior year. And Kevin, it was that direct pay component, right, that she was accessing, right?
Absolutely.
I just had a question about that. Are you implementing a particular protocol or a rubric as to when direct pay will be used? Because I don't see that here other than just the goal of reduction.
So there's no formal rubric. The understanding and process is it's really intended only for amounts that would be under $1,000, and typically it's under $100. It's typically paid for paying for officials, and if there's a need for urgent cash or urgent payment or reimbursement to someone who expended a small dollar amount.
Okay, but if there's nothing official, how do you intend to reduce that by 90%? How will those decisions be made?
It's Laura and I more proactively reviewing the direct pay system and making sure that we are setting up those payments instead of through direct pay, is actually setting up purchase orders.
Yeah, but to get to that protocol is a pretty simple step.
Right.
Right.
You just say, okay, these are the criteria that will or will not allow something to be paid out of direct pay.
Right. See, because that's what I'm wondering. I mean, a lot of this has happened because it was kind of fuzzy.
Sure.
And I think we need to skew toward articulating, documenting, and holding people accountable to those things.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that you and Laura are willing to spend the time, but you shouldn't have to, right? I mean, there should be a rule that says this is only when we'll do
the software is not going to make the rule. We're using a software that the whole county uses, and actually is one that the state, or it's statewide, that a number of counties use. So we, to my knowledge, I have not seen, both from here as well as up at Santa Barbara County, the ability for a district to implement a set rule necessitating, the system to spit it out and requiring us to go through a different payment process. So no matter what, we are going to be reviewing the payments to make sure that what we assume to be occurring is actually occurring. And so one thing that we identified in the report is the twice annual internal audit that's going to be occurring. But really what we're talking about here on the direct payment side is going to be a monthly review along with all the other payments that we're reviewing coming to you in the board report, looking at purchase orders. It's going to become very apparent that your stack of purchase orders in the board report is going to become longer and longer, especially at the beginning of the year, because we are setting up those initial purchase orders and paying off the PO. Again, the reason the purchase order is a more reliable method is we're actually setting up a vendor in a system, as opposed to, as we've discussed previously, direct pay allows you just to put any payee into the account at that time. It also gives us greater visibility to expenditures through the year, because you're setting up a single encumbrance and then, or set aside, you're setting aside that money at the beginning of the year, saying that we know that we're going to be paying $1,000 a month to a pest control vendor. Let's go ahead and set them up for $12,000 encumbrance for the year, and then throughout the year we can see, well, hey, it's April, we've only paid them $3,000, or have they not been invoicing us? Why is there this error? And so it gives us ability to review payment processing that way, but it also gives us the internal control of, again, the setting up a vendor separate, requiring additional checks and balances between. We have one person who sets up purchase order, but she's not the one who would actually approve an individual payment paid off the purchase order. We have a separate, our senior accounting assistants are the ones that process the payment. So for a number of reasons, we are going to be, or we will be using that method, and we've already begun.
Just to try to close the loop here, so that as you and Laura are working on this new, set of protocols, so as you just said, the purpose of direct pay was supposed to be able to process small amounts quickly,
Right.
without purchase orders, like, $100 for a basketball ref or whatever. So you could say, we could report back to the board, this is what it is, and the outliers, right, those beyond a certain amount, right, will have to come under these definitions, right, for whatever, like the one you just explained, okay? So you may not need a PO every time to do the monthly payment for a $12,000 total amount. That would be on a list of those things that are outside the lines, right, something like that. Right? We can do that.
Absolutely.
But you're right, human beings have to do it.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Well, I have to say, I really especially like the idea of, because I think it has collateral benefits to, efficiency and, just getting to, when you speak of the 5800, was that the object code for professional,
Right.
Again, got to use a better word for the slush fund.
Right.
But, to recall the history, that was a specific, that was an area that Jane had asked about.
Right.
And I was like, wow, it's a lot of money, exactly what's going on. And then in the process of you guys delving into this particular year in that particular object code, you started finding some anomalies.
Right.
So I love the fact that, and to me intuitively, as I've been trying to understand our budget, I love to use my term granularity, to be able to say, okay, I'm at TOPA, I'm Cheryl Knox, I've been allocated $2,000 for professional whatever, and then if all of a sudden somebody's claimed, so to speak, or debited that account by $1,000, and I don't know that anyone attended anything, then now all of a sudden I get on the phone to Andy and go, hey Andy, I thought I had $2,000. And since Angie's here, I'll say she was going to send Angie to that thing in Hawaii. So where's the money? But I think that has just the obvious effect. I mean, that would be the effect. People will look after their own budget, and if they feel that there's not as much there as should have been, they'll inquire.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I'll be interested to see if it also helps us look at, one of the things you and I did was look through and go, wow, we're paying a lot of money to AT&T. Do we need to do that? And if you can look into it and say, yeah, that's the only way to do this, this, and this, then you feel good about that number. But if you go, no, wow, I mean, Andy told me he discovered that we were on an old plan, AT&T is always offering new plans. No one had updated this plan for 10 years. So we were paying for data. We don't need to pay for data anymore. Those kind of things.
I'm paying for data.
Well, not in the same way,
We're paying for a very low number of minutes, and most plans are offering either unlimited or a far higher allotment. And so what we're having is a number of phones who every month are having overages that we're having to pay a very high fee on the overage. So.
Great.
But that's, when you break it down and you can see,
Right.
Is there a way to adjust this to save money? Not always, but if it's big numbers, it's harder to know, to get in there.
Right.
I love the way you've broken down what the issues were and what you've done to resolve them. I think that's really important stuff, and really appreciate the work, and Laura for all of that. I hate to say, but I'm going to. It sounds like you're talking about for next year to be able to present us a different kind of look at the budgets and the numbers. I think that would be really helpful if we could see our finances like any other accounting system in the world other than California schools.
Sure.
Where you see money coming in and you see money going out, rather than saying whatever it is we look at.
So that absolutely is, and that's part of the change, and that one is going to be ready for you at first interim, which will be coming to you next month.
Great.
So the full implementation of changes, which is, again, incorporation of really having this individual sites and department heads more involved. Something that I've talked to a few board members about. The technical ways in which we were budgeting, especially at second interim, and how that would lead to significant balances going unspent at the end of one year. Then we're seeing a really large increase at first interim because we hadn't budgeted just the ending balance in the first place. Now, if we know that we have $100,000, we're only going to spend $20,000. There's no reason to keep budgeting $100,000. We might as well just have that $80,000 drop down to the bottom and know that we're going to have the ending balance, and then we can create our adopted budget off of that ending balance we anticipate. That hasn't always been the case in certain funds. We've just continued to maintain that budget at the $100,000, even though we know we're not going to expend that full amount. That's something that's changing, but that can't change until we do another adopted budget. So there is still going to be some increases at first interim based off of how we closed out the 14-15 fiscal year.
Well, it's all part of a transition, but it's good. It's great to hear that we're going in that direction.
Absolutely. So something I'm excited about, and something I'm committing to each of you publicly, is that you will be seeing a very different report next month. You will certainly be seeing the same very ugly 137-page SACS report on the financials, but you'll be seeing a very different summary and introduction to that information, and hopefully it's going to be a little bit more of a usable format for both you as well as just the public at large. We do currently post all of our budgets online, so
Where are they posted? Because I was just looking again today, I couldn't find them.
on the business office page.
I looked on the business office page and all that was there was a reference to something, the budget wasn't there.
I'd be happy to send you an email. I did check it this afternoon, so I know that you have to scroll down a little ways, and I agree that we could make it in more highly visible area.
Is it available at a level? I mean, so when we get into these more granular views of the budget, including down to these object codes that we're talking about, will that also be made available to the public?
The only information currently online is the same information that goes before you guys at the adoption and the interim revisions.
Because I would just, as you know, I'm very interested in just having pretty much everything, as much information as possible available to the public. I also think that has the benefit, again, of, who knows who looks at it and goes, hold on, that shouldn't have been that. I'm the guy who charged that. That wasn't the amount of money or whatever. All right, so I'll look again. So,
any other questions, comments?
No, just thank you for all of your hard work, and thank you, Laura. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You guys it's way above and beyond, I think.
You bet. Congratulations. Thank
Actually,
you.
I just one more question. I know it's probably simple, but I couldn't quite follow the changing of the end of the month.
Page 5, page 5, paragraph 3.
So that switches over to some just operational efficiencies. That's not necessarily going to enhance our internal controls. But as I did speak with my peers in other districts, we found that there was a slight majority of districts that did have a payroll that ran from the first of the month till the end of the month. The benefit with us switching to having that model is, one, it gives us just more time to process. Right now, once we get the payroll information, which typically by the time it gets to the business office is between the 15th and the 18th, and then the county sets the pre-established date in which we have to have payroll closed somewhere between the 23rd and 26th or so. That means for those 5 or 6 days, the entire department is completely halted on processing any other payments, paperwork, because they need to focus on processing payroll, because it is about a week-long process. So that is going to give us just more time to be able to complete the task and be able to continue other operations during the time that we're processing payroll. But that's not the only change to payroll. We also are changing the number and types of forms that are coming in. So we are going to be streamlining the extra hour and sub timesheet. So it's going to now be in a single timesheet that's also going to include some information that previously was requiring multiple inputting of information into Excel by our office. Now we'll be able to all be in a single entry point on the paper. We're also going to be eliminating what was taking one of our employees nearly half a day or a full day to complete of these timesheets that were for attendance accounting, or were being duplicative for attendance accounting from these individual slips that employees currently fill out a leave slip. So we're getting rid of that, which was, again, 4 to 8 hours on the front end of creating each month, and then it was just taking additional time to actually process that paper and then ended up filing it. We're eliminating that. There's a few more pieces of paper that were coming in that weren't being used for actual leave accounting or other kind of processing on the payroll department, but instead it just became another form to file. We're eliminating that as well. It's something that's going to be staying at the sites and at the department level. So the payroll change, that date change, is going to just make it a much easier process for us to complete payroll in a timely fashion without having to sacrifice other areas of the operation. But it's just part of about 4 or 5 different changes to the payroll process that overall is going to free up time as well as provide flexibility.
Appreciate it.
I have one last one, and it's actually somewhat indelicate, but I think it has to be asked. Was there any consideration given to replacing Nigro and Nigro? And to the extent that there was, and you chose not to, can you speak to that?
Well, actually, no, the answer is there hasn't been a decision yet, but Andy and I talked about that earlier today on the December agenda. We'll be presenting to you a plan for taking a look at our services to do our audit. Which, by the way, you know, and I'm sure you've all been involved with organizations, it's not like a Supreme Court appointment here. You know, when you get to be an auditing firm, you don't get it forever.
Right.
Right. So we're going to be looking at some type of RFP that will give you an opportunity to participate with us, give them an opportunity to present what they want to present as potentially continuing, and then we'll decide whether they will or won't. One of the things we have to work on now, actually, as we develop the December and January agenda, is which of the 2 months will actually get the audit report, right? Which is not particularly related to this issue, because we can have a very professional conversation about what kind of information we're looking for from them if they want to submit a bid, and others also, right? So, yeah, no question, the issue of the auditing services became melded into this discussion, and deservedly so. But I learned, after reading a whole lot of audit reports over the years, I've always been frustrated by audit reports, to be honest with you, because a lot of times it's just a bunch of gobbledygook audit talk, and then you get to the end and it says, by the way, you have too many dollars sitting in somebody's drawer, in high school. So they don't really give you very much guidance, in my opinion, unless you really screw up, okay? Well, we'll certainly hear something, no question, in this audit report about the events that brought us to this report, but they're not the only game in town. Okay?
Well, and I bring it up because as I recall from the facts that we were presented with, you can confirm this, there had been an identification of a potential weakness and a request for more information made by the accountants, but
Yeah,
that it wasn't followed up.
the chronology sort of got redefined as time went on. It was really more, Laura found it. It wasn't, they had never talked about it, but it hadn't been followed up. And Laura was really the person who identified it, as opposed to the auditors. But there were other things that, in my opinion, I shared with you, could have, should have been identified along the way, either for the 13-14 year, or the 12-13 year, or 14-15 year. And, that'll be part of our conversation when we get to that point.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. 7.5.1, you want to?
Yeah, real quickly, so, again, chronology here is important. So we identified December 8th as our meeting, just sort of keep it away from the holiday period. And then, as happens sometimes, because we have one gymnasium and a lot of music going on, the high school music program, which is our biggest and obviously the biggest for the community to attend, needed to be on that date. So I initially reported that to you, plus by moving it off of December 8th, we had the opportunity for Mike to join us because he had his BCCCD, I get all the, right? There are a lot of C's. Yeah, a lot of his own board meeting. So that was really looking good, which it still sort of is, but you can't avoid some conflict. So Kathy put together this calendar for you. You can see that every elementary school from Monday through Thursday, or more than one, has the use of the Matilla Auditorium. It does turn out that the 15th is the Topa performance, so that is a conflict. The one date that falls within the span of dates that are eligible for it's not actually so much the December board meeting, it actually is, as we say here, the organizational meeting that we have to report to the county, right? So you might as well do them at the same time. The one date that's completely open is Wednesday the 9th, and I just didn't know how Wednesday fell into your own calendars. I'll be here. Okay, whatever works for the five of you, Andy and I will be here.
I prefer the 9th.
What'd you like?
I'm open for both.
Doesn't matter to me.
You okay?
Mike, you're
I can
okay?
do the 9th.
Why don't we do the 9th?
Okay, very good.
And this is an important meeting because we will thank very much the officers who have served this
Yes.
year for their outstanding work.
You mean the president?
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll be playing musical chairs.
There you go. We'll switch your nameplates. So that's thank you very much. That was quick, but you should go ahead and take action on that.
Right, so for our annual organizational meeting, it's been proposed that we meet on December 9th. Do we have a motion?
I move approval.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and item 7.5.2, we were given 3 different sections of policies to review.
Actually, there's sort of 4, but anyway, when I did write to you, I wrote to you this afternoon. When did I finally write? Oh, noon, actually.
Yeah.
And just to give you the brief overview here, so, you know, it all sort of falls under the general heading of making sure that you're treating your students correctly according to policies, which we did, by the way, back in June, but these things never seem to stop. You know, they just keep coming with different iterations. And so,
I see
right,
another one.
yeah, so
Here.
that's okay. So my recommendation, just to get to the bottom line, is to table the board policy and administrative regulations for what we're calling non-discrimination/harassment, 5.5145.3, right? And then, Ann and I talked about earlier today, then go back to the 2 categories that for which we gave you information that you could act on, would be the bullying and the sexual harassment updates. So we could do that.
Right, so we're looking at the BP 5131
Correct?
and the,
Can we have the pages numbered?
Yeah, we talked. Well, actually, they are, Kathy, why don't you explain that? They actually
So
are.
I do apologize for not having numbers at the bottom of the page that are consecutive. The way these pages are numbered is by the name of the policy and then a letter, and the letter indicates
Yeah, so
A
they actually are
for page 1, B for page 2.
yeah, so we're looking in the top right.
Yeah, we're looking at BP 5131, exactly as you said, point 2, that's bullying.
Right.
BP 5145.7, which is a combination of, well, BP and AR.
Right, so we're not looking at AR 5145.3.
Correct. That will be coming next month.
If that makes sense.
And Andy, I know you've worked on this with John. Is there anything you want to say about the two topics, the bullying and the sexual harassment?
No, I think they're very straightforward and open to any questions anyone has.
I think they're just really important. I was glad to see, I have, you know, on all of them noted that it's just really important that we're going to this extent, just really detailed.
Well, you are, and again, I want to be sure it's on the record. So you know, as recently as if I can get his name here, Nick Vujicic experience. When I had my chance to speak after you all did, you know, I underscored what I've said numerous times about how I feel personally and professionally, and as a father, grandfather, about bullying and how much of a commitment we made. So, you know, even without all this, you know, we have just an extraordinary program that Janine Murphy's put together. But to have more structure around it is a good thing.
And the part that we're not covering tonight, it's not because we don't care. It's because we worked really hard on some policy language a few months ago that addresses this, and we just want to make sure that we're being consistent before we go.
And also waiting just another week or so to hear from Sacramento to be sure that we have their most recent
final version.
iteration.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So why don't we take a look at 5131.2 first?
I have something on E. Does anyone have anything before that?
Oh, thank you, about the days?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay, so I wrote to you today, yeah. And John, thank you, if you don't mind, I'll intercede here. So I know what you're talking about. If you look at the bottom of the page, the recommendation was within 1 business day of receiving such a report, right? You know, in this case, someone has been subject to bullying. I'm not, John is usually too perfect on this. I'm not really sure, except he eventually said he just wanted to give us more time to deal with it. We don't need 3 days. No, when you hear about it, you make a report. So 1 day is more than sufficient. Okay, so you can see he crossed it out. The original writing was 1, so that's what I would recommend, that we have 1 day instead of 3.
Right. And that was my only comment on here as well. Yeah.
Then just say something I knew this
Or
was-
within 24 hours or something.
Yeah, 1
Yeah, because if you
business
find
day.
out at 5 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah,
Well, you-
24
one day,
hours.
you have 24
A day, a business day, okay? And by the way, that's even silly, because if you hear about it on Friday, you don't have to wait till Monday, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The weekends count.
Are there any other comments on that section?
No, I thought this was really good stuff.
No, perfect. So with that one modification, I think we're good for our next meeting. All right, and then let's look at BP 5145.7. Are there any comments on that? I don't, this is a first for me, but I actually don't have any comments.
Well, I guess I have just a question, and Hank, you did respond to me on B, when it says any employee who receives a report or observes a sexual hazard shall notify the principal. I said, can we say within 1 day again? And, I mean,
It's not there, but absolutely.
I don't know if bullying and sexual harassment
No,
are
it's the same.
different,
No,
but
they're not.
No,
Well,
I think
they
does it say
may
what
be
kind of
different, they may be different, they may be similar, but.
They could be the same,
But the
yeah.
same need to act promptly exists.
Right.
I have no problem with
Does anyone
that.
have a problem adding
Nope.
the wordage?
I think that's great.
I do have a question on the second paragraph on page B. It talks about locations, right? I'm not a Title IX expert. I'm rapidly becoming one involuntarily. But isn't there something about off-campus nexus that's not an activity, it's not a facility, but it's between our own students?
Oh, absolutely.
All right,
And,
'cause I couldn't find that.
Well, right, and that's like, that comes under the heading of in school discipline and other things not enumerated, in the principal's or superintendent's letter. You hit the right word, nexus. So, we would never want students to feel that 240, they have to deal with each other one way, and at 242, even if you throw in, make it 252 by the time they get home, so school to home to home. But even at 4 o'clock, if something happens at 4 o'clock that by any definition is bullying, sexual harassment, let's keep under those 2 categories, and you can draw an absolute conclusion that it occurred because of what was being discussed at noon at lunch, right? And then somebody was sexually harassed because of that, we act on it 100% of the time. And that's my belief. And if someone challenges us on it, that it was too remote, the relationship was too remote, then bring your lawyer, I have one too. Because we're gonna deal with that as if it took place at noon.
Okay.
There is actually in the harassment one, I think it talks about that. If it's it's affecting the school day and a child's ability to feel safe and to study and to learn because of what happened, that even if it didn't happen.
Right, that I saw, I just didn't see, because we're getting bombarded at work about this type of thing.
Sure.
Everything was, location specific or activity specific in this one, and it was like, where is that?
Well, as I
broader?
said, right, so what happens sometimes, you get policies where and I'm not saying it happened here because I don't know, but, one legislator or staff of a legislator will write something, and they'll say, make sure you put in the location. And then the other legislator who wants his bit, in the school code, doesn't put that in there, so you have the one and not the other. I'm just saying from a school operational standpoint, discipline standpoint, I don't need the guidance. I don't need the guidance of where it can or can't take place. Now, there are limits. I mean, if kids are sort of okay at noon on Friday, and then they get into problems at 10 o'clock on a party on Saturday night, we're not 24/7, watching over kids. And so if it sort of didn't really happen, but it sort of did, and it's pretty remote, then, our principals and assistant principals are not there being, social police. That's not what we're doing. But if the nexus is there, we'll deal with it. And the biggest challenge these days really is with cyberbullying. That's the single greatest by far relationship outside of school that creates exactly what you said inside school. It's awful. We had 5 years ago, and happened to be at the junior high, we had just a real problem that was curbed, but it took a lot of hours, to have these 13-year-olds understand what they were doing to each other.
Yeah, it's rough. Good, thank you.
Important stuff. Moving to...
Do we don't need
You want to approve this?
do we-
Oh,
You want to approve the, well, first reading,
yeah, that's the first reading.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you're right.
But
You know.
we'd like changes, that one change
Yeah, we
made
will.
on each.
Yeah, we'll do that. Got it.
Great, 7.5.3, by voting on this now, it means we might not attend that 7-Eleven.
You don't need to. You don't have another special meeting.
But to fill 2 spots on that committee, to bring it up to 11, we do have 2 individuals that have been identified, Merv Van Acker and Dimitri Corbin.
Yep, we do. And I want to thank Angie. I would thank her, even if you weren't here. So Angie and I talked about having a teacher representative take the place of Mike Crumschmidt, who unfortunately has some medical issues he has to attend to. Otherwise, I know he would have been excited to continue on the committee. So Merv, I gave you a little thumbnail of Merv here. Has been with us since 2011-12 in a teaching role at Nordhoff in special education. His wife Laura is a critical part of our special education and now in a special in-house certified role, helping our most challenged kids, and have a child at Miners Oaks. And Merv, and he spent a lot of time working with us this past spring to achieve the settlement as the OFT Vice President for Negotiation. So that is Merv. Dimitri, many of us know him, right? So we could speak, he's just a quality guy and has done all kinds of things as you see here delineated, particularly in the arts, both in the district and more outside the district, but definitely inside the district. And as I told Thane, we have the kind of relationship where he just stops by every 4 months or so just to stop by, because he likes to stop by. He's just a great guy, and so I'm representing our 3-person committee that's had a lot of work. It's a couple of months. Every time we think we have 11, we have 10, then we have 9, then we have 10, then we have anyway. So hopefully this will be the last recommendation we make, and we're excited for both of them. That's my thoughts on it.
Yes. Well, actually, I did want to relate it. We sort of have decided that it is the last recommendation because the committee is getting so far along and the information is digesting that it's going to be too difficult to catch someone up. So the idea of 11 tonight, but after the next meeting, that will be 3 meetings, and it'll just be, as long as we maintain 7, that will be where we'll head from here.
That was the recommendation of the committee as well, that this is the last edition, and whatever happens from here on out, we don't drop those 7.
You guys got to be nicer to these people. They keep dropping on.
It's a very abusive atmosphere.
Actually, it has nothing to do with that. I retract that statement.
Actually, Dimitri just texted, he's out.
He's watching on TV.
Anyway, Linda, you feel good about the?
Yes.
I know you know. You were our main contact with Dimitri, so thank you for that.
And again, to reiterate, I've just been so impressed with the quality of the questions coming from the committee in terms of requesting documentation. I feel really good that, there will be a full analysis.
Well, and I was going to say, I know both Merv and Dimitri pretty well. Merv better, but I know Dimitri pretty well as well. He directed something, one of my kids was in at TOPA, and by hook and by crook, it's sort of accidental that we got to this group of 11, but it makes it, I think, even more diverse. I mean, I think, Merv or Dimitri really has a very strong arts perspective on things, so that voice will be in the room, and then Merv, obviously, he comes at it from a perspective that actually includes, in a good way, kind of the nuts and bolts of finance and what's going on with the teachers and salaries and all that. So, and special ed, which that's his specialty as well as his wife. So, I'm totally happy with this development.
Then can we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the 2 new members
I'll second.
to the 7-11 committee.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Good one.
Now, yeah, very good. 7.5.4. I wish I could say this was a direct result of the excellent comments made by the public earlier in the meeting.
It was.
It was.
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, we're not acting on something that wasn't already on the agenda.
I was going to say, because it's an emergency.
I want to be really careful about
I'm gonna leave that one alone. Okay.
This has been properly agendized.
Yeah. Anyway.
But also resulted from some excellent comments in our previous regular meeting about many groups in the community who would like to, item 1, many groups in the community who would like to volunteer to help, and the resources that are available in the community. And so the idea here in 1 is to create a committee that will work with our union leaders, our staff, our administration, to identify projects that will benefit all of us and that are acceptable. I'm
Now,
excited
is it
about
strictly
that.
for grounds and facilities, or is it
I think it
also-
could be anything.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the genesis of it really was Thames following up on the conversation, the event back with Nick V. And the Ministerial Association doing all that great work at Nordhoff. And you positioned it very well. So I'm formally encouraging Chuck to be a volunteer on the committee because he's had a lot to do with actually enhancing a lot with Josh and others.
I think we'd be missing out on a lot if Chuck were not part of that committee.
But he'll be involved somehow. But anyway, the point is that we're a long way on the positive end toward including at important levels and steps the classified staff leadership, in this case it is Chuck, to receive requests from parents and other volunteers to work on our schools, not education, right, the grounds and facilities. But the difference between that, which is better than it was by a lot, and this is, to use, I think Angie used the word, being proactive, right? To step forward and say, here are some projects that do qualify for your help, okay? And make sure that everybody's on board, right? That they all qualify, everybody wants to do them. And we're not either doing something that's technically wrong relative to union contract, or it just doesn't fit, right? So the point is, we had a great experience with 100+ people at going to Nordhoff. Let's see if we can capitalize on that. Right? So that's number 1. And ultimately, the point of all this is to see who at this table would like to be involved. I know you would like to be involved, number 1. And number 2, I have a sense that a couple of board members might be interested in this coordination among, let's give you 4 administrator types. It would be Andy and Josh and I and Dennis. Kuykendall is not a staff member, but the 4 of us, and as I've said numerous times at this table, 1 or 2 board members and 2, probably 3 at the most, 1, 2, or 3 members of the COC to meet to talk about priorities for Measure J that we would then, of course, be reporting to the board. But at least everybody would get in on the ground floor, right? So we could learn with and from each other what are some of the key challenges we have. I mentioned one tonight, groups, right? So that's the second one. And the third one actually comes from actually a combination of conversations I've had with Jane and Angie about let's create a calendar as soon as we can for the next couple of years, right? Hopefully, we'll be able to retain the present full school year calendar. That's the assumption I'm starting, right? And then let's take a look at options. We already heard one, right, from Lindsay. We actually have a major change this year, not in the whole district calendar, but at the high school, right? And so what happened there was we really didn't change the beginning and the end of the year much, but they wanted to go ahead and make this change at the semester for the reasons that you know about it. You understand a real winter break, have exams before winter break. So they went ahead and did it knowing they were going to have an imbalance in the semesters. But it really doesn't matter that much at Nordhoff compared to some other larger high schools because we don't have very many single semester courses that get replicated, right? So what you don't want, if you have 36 weeks, you don't want 15 weeks and 21, right, of the same course.
Right.
But we have very few of those, right? In bigger schools where you have just more options, it would have been a bigger issue.
So just to clarify, so the first semester is a shorter.
At Nordhoff.
At Nordhoff is a shorter
Shorter
semester.
by 15 days or so, yeah.
Then, okay.
Right, yeah, but it really, as I said, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I got it.
Well, it matters a little bit. Not, I mean, you have to get your grades for the first semester, you have to compress that study, but you just don't cover as much. Right? But you cover the whole year course eventually. So those are the 3 committees. I think each one has a lot of merit, and I'm hoping that 1 or 2 of you would want to serve on each of the 3.
I'd be willing to serve on the calendar.
Glad you can.
I would be on the traveling. Well, we didn't mention that, never mind. No, I'll be on
The conference
I'll be
committee.
on the committee to Hawaii. No, COC, I'll do that.
Okay.
I'm actually interested in the facilities one. I think that would be interesting.
That's number 1 or 2?
1, 2.
Yeah.
Which
I'll
one?
do 1 or 2, depending on where we need to, but,
And
I was interested in 1 also, but remember, I only have 1 more year to serve on the board, so
Right.
you guys should have your priority because you're going to be on the board longer.
well,
Are you
Officially announcing your retirement here?
Yeah. Well, I've been announcing it, so.
if it's okay, what would be interesting to me is, Linda, because you're working with Rotary, there might be some crossover on volunteer
I think so, yeah.
things. So if Mike, if you'd be okay on 2.
oh, no, yeah, that's fine. No,
Yeah,
good.
and so Mike and Kevin on 2.
Wait, he's on it?
You know what? Let's just bury the hatchet.
I actually would like to be
That would be
on
5 people.
I would like to be on that too, but I would really like to make number 1.
Yeah.
So if Linda and I are on 1, and then Jane, you're on 3?
Mike and Kevin on 2.
Yeah.
Very good.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
So you want, just, if you would just, it's an action item, just so we have it in the minutes.
Okay, so if we could have a motion to appoint the members as designated for these 3 committees?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Superintendent's report.
I'll start the way I usually do. I have a different report at 7:30 than I have at 8:10. It's now 8:10. I guess I would reflect very positively, without getting too schmaltzy here, about just these last 2.5 hours. I mean, I could talk about things that are done in the district, which is sort of the theory here, but I'd like to start with Angie's comments. Thank you very much. Always appreciate compliments. My mother told me, be sure to say thank you to someone who gives you a compliment. So even though I was only one of the 7 people who complimented me, I say that. And I agree with everything you said. And I do agree. I'll be responsible for 6.5 years of the 20, however many you've been here. I do agree that, I'll just speak to those, we have been exceptionally reactive. Exceptionally, by necessity. Okay. in most cases. Because, and when we get to this conversation that Diane talked about, which will be one of the agenda items in December, you can't escape the fact that some of the wonderful things you might want to do are resource-based, right? And so we've had those challenges. We haven't been able to keep as many people as we had in 2009. But now that hopefully we're leveling out a bit, and we're going to get to that soon in terms of our available resources in the next couple of years. The fact is that just what you heard tonight, right, with the Common Core and all the things that are coming down the pipe, the people to whom Angie referred, I 100% agree with the quality of people we have around here. I do think it's a great time, and Kevin quickly mentioned it as a thing, it's a great time to have a conversation in the rest of the school year to talk about what some of our options could be in the upcoming years, some resource-based, some not. So I think that tonight is a bit of the beginning of a new era, not only in terms of school board meetings, but in terms of conversing about critical issues that are facing us, in part some we've created, i.e. 7-Eleven Committee, i.e. COC and Measure J. So we created both in one way or another. But then there are other things that we haven't talked about yet that are options out there that we could consider for visioning our future, which are not on our present agenda. So that really is where I'm at in terms of the most important thing that is facing the district right now is not a litany of things that happened, between October 6th and November 17th, but the way I see opportunities upcoming for doing things differently. Okay, let's use Andy as an example. All the things that were in that report are creating a different future for financial operations than present and past. All the things that the elementary principals and all four of them and Marilyn talked about, absolutely as you could get, are creating way different pedagogies and materials and test data, totally different grades right now 3 through 6. And you'll hear way much more about it grades 7 through 11 upcoming. So great time to be thinking about a different future and I hope a more exciting one and a less reactive and somewhat more proactive future than the present and past.
Thank you. Items for future agendas.
I have something that's not a future agenda. I just want to inform the board of a really wonderful thing that happened. I'm in the Ojai Studio Artists, and we have our open studio weekend, the second weekend in October every year. And we always have an art reception on Saturday night, and with serving food and things like that. And the County of Ventura has created huge roadblocks to nonprofits like my group and other groups to putting on receptions where we're serving food. Unbelievable roadblocks. Well, we called Suzanne Lukatoff and asked her if she could give us some assistance, and she jumped in and took over the whole food aspect of the reception. The cafeteria staff made these absolutely amazing desserts that were packaged. Everything had to be packaged.
Oh, that's the rule.
That's the rule.
Exactly.
And they packaged everything up. They came and served the food. It was beautiful. They did an incredible job. I mean, if she hadn't done that, if the cafeteria staff hadn't stepped up, we would have been having peanuts and coffee, basically.
Packaged
Packaged peanuts.
How many people were there, would you say?
About 250.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Whoa.
It's a big event. I think we sold about 750 tickets, and then we also give away tickets. We gave away about another 200 tickets. So close to 1,000 people came to the event, and but 250 at the reception.
Wow.
And it was amazing. I mean, Suzanne just was our angel.
Oh, that's
our
great.
absolute angel. So I just wanted to share that with you guys.
That's wonderful.
Great.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks.
So do we need to mention that we would like to put on the agenda, putting some goals, or setting some goals
Yeah, sure.
for within the next year, and some, whether it's a committee to talk about ideas, or?
Well, I know, I certainly strongly believe personally, and I think I'm representing a consensus, unanimous view, not a consensus, unanimous view of the board, that a first step on the December meeting is a presentation of some thoughts I have about some areas I'd like to work on, and also some areas where I think the district should be visioning. So they're both sort of tactical, personal superintendent things, and then broader issues that we can talk about, which gets to what I was talking about in my superintendent's report. So and this all came out of the board evaluation of my work in this past year. So that will be on the agenda in December.
Great. And another point, I mean, usually we don't talk about, usually at this part of the program, we just talk about things that aren't already going to be on the agenda, but as long as we're talking about those things, we'll also have a discussion about the pool at Nordhoff. And just exactly how we need to work on that to not waste any efforts.
Yeah, and on that subject, I would love to think that, we talk about it early with a lot of stakeholders and before the train has left the station. I think that's the main idea is to get good ideas early enough that we could actually act on them.
Actually, that was Josh's view within the last several weeks, that it's important to get those people together. And whether it's part of the conversation in the second committee or not, the COC, what we do there is both required by county/state and also discretionary. Right? So there are things, that pool can be very different than it is now. I'm talking about visioning. And that pool can be very, very different. And I don't think anybody would argue that it can be radically enhanced. Okay.
Hank, just to throw this in, I'm not sure where it's appropriate, but in terms of when you're talking about the visioning stuff, and I think it'd be very interesting to hear your thoughts and where you see us going. But I'm hopeful that we'll consider some sort of a participative process for the district level goals. With staff and administrators and stuff.
An idea day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's actually what Angie talked to me about. So we had a meeting. She said, this is something that she, on behalf, or at least the OFT, would like to participate in, and I've done it other places. Absolutely. When I put something out on the table, this is absolutely okay. This is what we're going to do, and what do you think about it? It's not even close. It's just, I think it's probably a good idea to start with something. So I'm just going to give you some starters.
Good.
And maybe we could propose to the new board officers that next year we have some sort of a...
Idea day.
Yeah.
Committee.
Great.
You're in charge.
Linda, you'd be a great president for that.
That is the last thing really I'm going to do as president, other than I ask for any comments on the consent calendar or motion to approve.
Well, if this is the last thing you're doing as president, I want to say, as someone who's only been on a school board for less than a year, I thought you did a great job, and thank you for your service.
Thanks a lot.
You had a
Appreciate
great
it.
sense of humor and a wonderful perspective that kept us on track, so thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Hopefully you'll allow me to talk in the coming year as well. All right. Well, thanks a lot. We need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. And the meeting's closed. Thank you very much.